Hello and welcome to And the Runner-Up Is. This week on the show, we're talking the 2006 Best Actress race at the Academy Awards, where Helen Mirren won for her performance in The Queen. But why did she beat fellow nominees Penélope Cruz, Judi Dench, Meryl Streep, and Kate Winslet? We'll explore all this and more today on And the Runner-Up Is. Hello, and welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is. I'm your host, Kevin Jacobson, here to talk about the 79th year of Best Actress at the Oscars, which cover the films of 2006. We'll be discussing how Helen Mirren won, why the losers lost, and who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. And my guest today is a culture writer, critic, and curator who you last heard talking with me about the 1952 Best Actress race, Shirley Booth's win. And I'm so excited that he's back for this iconic year of years. Welcome back, Murtada Elfadl.
Oh, Kevin, I'm so happy and excited to be back. And like you said, this is an iconic year. When you asked me to do this, I'm like, I felt so honored that I get to talk about 2006 because I think it's the best year, at least of that decade, if not of the new century. Just the movies that are in it are movies, all five of them. I think we all still watch them. They're still relevant in the culture. These actresses are all at the top of their game. We still watch them today. They are still like right now, all five of them, you can talk about their current projects and how amazing work they're still doing 20 years later, or 18 years later. So yeah, it's exciting. And four of them are like my favorite actresses of all time. Like if I had a top 10, four of these actresses will be in it, and my number one is in one of the movies that we're going to talk about. So it's exciting to talk about this year in these movies, because it's also movies I have seen so many times. Like when I went and rewatched to talk to you, I just felt like I was Notes on a Scandal specifically. I was just like talking along with the actors in that movie, or with The Devil Wears Prada, even Volver, and I don't speak Spanish, but I've watched these movies so many times.
Same. Yeah. This was one where I didn't have to take as many notes as I usually do, because I just knew all of this already, basically.
Yes,
so
totally.
Yeah. And also can't wait to hear about the actress who sadly did not make your top 10. Because you said four of the five. I think I already know who it is, but
yes.
We'll get to it.
We'll get to her, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, before we talk 2006, let's talk Best Actress overall. Last time you told me your favorite Best Actress win of all time was a tie with Vivien Leigh in A Streetcar Named Desire and Cate Blanchett in Blue Jasmine. Great answer, very much like two sides of the same coin there. So now I'll broaden it even further and ask you, what is your favorite Best Actress lineup overall of all time? Is it this? Is it another year?
I mean, I think this is up there, for sure. I think this is pretty amazing, just for the reasons I just said, is that these are films still relevant in the culture, and actresses, all five of them, still working, and they're all in middle age or even later in life, and they're still working and giving us amazing work. And despite the misogyny and sexism of Hollywood, they're still producing great work and actresses. So yeah, I think this is it. There's always like, so I think the year of like Cate Blanchett versus Michelle Yeoh was like a great year for those two performances in Tar and everything, whatever that movie's called. Can't remember it. Everything
everywhere all at once.
Yeah. Yes. But then the other three weren't as good. But if they had, for example, like if Viola Davis was there, if Daniel Deadwyler was there instead of some of the people they nominated, that would have been a great year. So I think it was a great year in like the people we were talking about, but not a great year
top two.
Yeah, and who actually got nominated in the end. So yeah, I think I like the year of when Olivia Colman won, because that was a year,
Mm,
I know that was an exciting year in that we also thought Glenn Close was gonna win, but then Olivia Colman was also somebody who was becoming a star before our eyes and becoming not just a star, but like the most respected actress, suddenly the Oscar favorite. And then having Roma in there and having Melissa McCarthy and Lady Gaga. Like that was,
Gaga.
yeah, that was a
Just
great
the
year.
presence of Gaga. I know.
Yeah. So that's, I think, of the last, since 2006, I would say
Yeah.
the Melissa versus Glenn with Gaga on the sideline was a very exciting year. Not Melissa, I mean Olivia versus
Olivia.
Glenn with
Yeah.
Lady Gaga in the sidelines, because Melissa was never a winner, really. But great
Right.
performance.
But should have contended a little stronger, I think. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I mean, I can't wait to get to so many of those that you listed. You only listed like two, but still, like both of them are fantastic.
Yeah.
And I truly cannot wait to dive into this one. But one more question for you before we get to it. You said your most heartbreaking loss in this category was Angela Bassett in 1993 for What's Love Got to Do with It. So now I will ask, what would you say overall is your favorite snub, or maybe not favorite, but most significant snub in this category of someone who wasn't even nominated?
Oh, what was the Jennifer Aniston movie? What was it called? The what?
Cake.
Cake, yes. I
Wow.
mean, it's kind of mean to be like this is my favorite snub, but like it was so preordained that that terrible movie was going to get a nomination for Best Actress, and then it didn't, and instead the Academy wisely nominated Marion Cotillard in
Sure.
One Day, Two Nights, or Two Nights, One Day, whatever that movie's called.
2 days, 1 night.
Two
Yeah.
Days, One Night. See, I'm terrible with titles. 2 days, One Night, and which was an amazing performance and was actually my favorite performance by an actress that year. And so, because these things, sometimes you're just like the buzz and the pundits and the press just want something to happen. So, but like I remember Variety, which I write for, but they had
Very
this
good.
thing, like I'm criticizing them, which they had this thing and that they still published after Jennifer Aniston was not nominated that she might win the SAG, which was obviously a piece somebody had written before she didn't get
Yeah.
the nomination, and then they were like, "Oh, we just run it. Jennifer Aniston will get clicks." And so,
Wow.
everybody was kind of just wanting that. And it was such a publicity stunt. Like, nobody watched that movie. It wasn't really released. It was not a good movie. And so this was completely somebody who was going to win, who was going to get nominated based on narrative and basically having a very good publicity team. And it didn't happen. And, you can say the Andrea Riseborough thing was also a publicity thing, but that at least is an actress who has been working for a very long time in many good movies, and people think of her as a great actress. Well, Jennifer Aniston is a great comedian, but and I like her in Friends, and I like her when she does her look at me, I'm doing Barbara Streisand in What's Up, Doc. I think she's very good at comedy, but I don't think
Yeah.
she's ever been in a movie that would have got her a nomination. So that not happening, it's mean to say it's my favorite, it's not, but it is.
First of all, this is such a funny interpretation of the question because generally what I usually mean is like someone who we want to be nominated,
Oh,
you know.
really?
Yes. Whereas I feel like you took the opposite approach there.
Oh,
But
wow, wow, wow. I went totally mean into this,
yeah,
but you know
but
what?
that's that I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a
Anyway,
rumor that she arranged for like a press conference like on the day of
yes.
nominations,
Yeah.
Jennifer
Yeah.
Aniston, and then she had to awkwardly cancel it?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody, we all thought she was going to get nominated, and then no. And
Yeah.
for a worthy performance that was in a fantastic movie and a much better movie and an amazing performance. So it's a win for all. So maybe my favorite non-snub is Marion Cotillard in 2 days. One Night.
Right. That's
Let me put
funny.
a positive spin on this.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, some good came of it. I always love the clip that goes around of Catherine O'Hara in For My Consideration,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
people like to compare to Jennifer Aniston in Cake, of being like the
Yes.
morning of nominations and she didn't get one, and then she's like rambling about the French girl who got in. Like, what is
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
anyway, anyway,
Yeah, that's
tangent.
funny.
But yeah, will be very fun to get to that year as well, because that is
Yeah.
a year where everyone kind of knew Julianne Moore was winning, and so it was just like everyone else, thanks for playing.
Yeah,
But
totally. But there was
yeah,
that surprise on nomination morning, so
right.
that was
Yeah,
exciting.
very much so. All right. Well, speaking of exciting, let's talk about this year at the Oscars. The 79th Academy Awards Best Actress nominees were, here we go, Penelope Cruz in Volver, Judi Dench in Notes on a Scandal, Helen Mirren in The Queen, Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada, and Kate Winslet in Little Children, with the winner being Dame Helen Mirren. So before we break down these performances, I mean, you've already talked about, the qualities of this lineup. I'm just curious, if you were kind of watching at the time in 2006 and just what your thoughts were, if you can remember,
Yeah.
of that time and just your overall thoughts beyond what you've already said.
I was watching because
Yeah.
2006, I was definitely like, have been watching the Oscars for a while then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think this was my first year after I moved to New York. I think so. Yeah.
Mm.
So this might have been the first Oscars is that the year of The Departed?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So this is definitely the first Oscar I've seen after moving to America. And I guess I don't know why I wasn't as, I think that year I was not as taken with, I don't know what was wrong with me, but I was more invested in Martin Scorsese getting his Oscar than I was in Best Actress because it
A
seemed
lot
like
of people were.
were
Yeah.
ordained for Dame Helen Mirren, who was,
Yeah.
quite took the world by storm because everybody first of all saw Elizabeth II is very boring. Why are they gonna make a movie about her? And then it was a good movie that people liked, and she was good. So it seemed like she was just gonna win since the very beginning. But I was invested in Meryl Streep because I think
Hmm.
at the time I loved The Devil Wears Prada the most of the movies. Because it opened in the summer and it was a big hit and people were, and so by the time the Oscars came, it was like, established as a new favorite. And so I was invested in Meryl. And, as with many people who love Meryl until she won for that god awful movie, we're all very invested in her getting a third Oscar.
Yeah.
And so I was all for Meryl getting a third Oscar. Notes on a Scandal was one of those movies that opened in New York and LA on like December 27 after
Mm-hmm.
Christmas. And I remember I went to the AMC in the Upper West Side. I lived in the Upper West Side my my first few years in New York. And I was there the day it opened at like the 10 a.m. screening because, of course, Kate Blanchett and Judi Dench. Why wouldn't I be there? And I remember I watched it and I thought, oh, this is okay. I didn't know at the time that this will become one of my favorite movies of all time and a movie
Mm-hmm.
that I literally would watch at least a couple of times every year. It's just at the time I just thought, oh, what is this movie about this woman who sleeps with a 15-year-old? And I didn't get it for the camp classic, the queer sort of masterpiece that it is of that script with those one-liners and two of the best actresses ever delivering them. So yeah, now I'm invested in this should have been Judi Dench winning, but at the time I was more about
Yeah.
Meryl winning her third.
Makes
What
sense.
about
Yeah.
you? You must have been
Yeah.
watching
Well,
that year too, right?
yes, this was a very important year for me. This is where, for one reason or another, I just got so much more invested than I had been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because I just, again, like you, was kind of invested in the Martin Scorsese coronation party. And I really loved Little Miss Sunshine, and I loved all of these actresses even at the time. And so for me, this was like, even if it did, like, speaking of coronation, feel like this was just the Helen Mirren coronation, I found this to be such an incredible, unimpeachable lineup. I just think from top to bottom, any one of these nominees would have been great winners,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Yeah.
And it is a shame to me that Helen Mirren just totally swept and that there was no real race. Like, it was pretty much locked up from the time that even like
Mm-hmm.
critics were voting. So even if the race itself wasn't all that exciting, the actual nominees we got, I think, are mostly some of the best performances of
Hmm.
their careers.
Yep.
I mean, Meryl's performance is certainly iconic and quoted almost daily on social media.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
Judi Dench in Notes on a Scandal is just camp excellence, and to people who have seen it, they're obsessed with it. More people should see it.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess we should say our little corner of film Twitter or whatever is obsessed with it.
Oh my God,
Um,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Kate Winslet in Little Children. We love Todd Field. We love suburban drama. This is a very juicy role and performance. Penelope Cruz working with her beloved Pedro Almodovar. You know, so exciting that she got her first nomination being in one of his films. And, you know, Helen Mirren winning over all of them is, you know, really establishing herself as a true leading star,
Hmm.
more so maybe than she had been, at least in America. I mean, she was like a star obviously before
Yeah.
this, but she sort of elevated and had like this great second act of
Oh
sorts
yeah,
as the
totally.
grand dame sort of thing. So it's incredible. I don't know yet who I'm gonna say I would have voted for because I just adore all of them, but
I think I already gave the bag on that.
a little bit. We'll get to it. So shall we get right into it?
Let's do it. I'm so excited.
Okay. All right. Well, we are starting off with Penelope Cruz in Volver. So, Penelope Cruz getting her first Oscar nomination for Volver, and so here I have to introduce her. Penelope Cruz, Spanish actress. She was born in Alcobendas in Spain, and at first she trained in the ballet for several years before she was inspired to become an actress after seeing Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, which was, of course, directed by Pedro. So, there's a long history there. Her first film was Jamon Jamon, which got her quite a bit of attention, primarily for her looks, you know, and she appeared in Spanish films, Italian films through the 90s. Meanwhile, she's learning English, and she also appeared briefly in her first Almodovar film, Live Flesh. So then her first American film was The High-Low Country, but she still did Spanish films in between, like The Girl of Your Dreams. She worked with Almodovar again in All About My Mother, very good role for her. And her first lead role in an American film was Woman on Top. She was in All the Pretty Horses. Not quite breaking out in a super major way yet, but then 2001, she's in both Vanilla Sky and Below, and over time she's becoming known in Hollywood, and then this role in Volver allows her to be taken much more seriously and proves to at least an American audience that she has the chops. So Volver is another film by Almodovar, and it stars Penelope as Raimunda, a hardworking woman living in Madrid with her daughter Paula and Paula's father Paco. Raimunda's parents are believed to have died in a fire 3 years earlier, and she also has a sister, Soleil, who she kind of leans on. So one day, Paco makes some sexual advances on Paula, which leads to Paula stabbing him to death, and Raimunda discovers this and covers it up by throwing the body into the local restaurant's freezer, and she ends up working at the restaurant while trying to keep her secret hidden. Meanwhile, Soleil is haunted by the ghost of their mother, who turns back up in her life, though she actually keeps that a secret from Raimunda. So lots of juicy stuff going on in this
Yeah.
film. But Murtada, just thoughts on Penelope overall as an actress and her collaborations with Almodovar and this performance.
Yeah, I mean, when listening to you talk about her right now, I started remembering that people really did not take her seriously before Volver,
Yeah.
especially in America, which is now seems like
Mm-hmm.
such a strange idea, like one of
I
the
know.
best actors of all time in Penelope Cruz. And but yeah, she made all those movies that she just seemed miscast in America. I mean, obviously people saw her in All About My Mother and in other Spanish movies and knew the talent was there, but somehow something got lost in translation until Pedro gave her this lead role, and then she went off, and now she can do no wrong, whether it was Woody Allen or Michael Mann or whoever it is, in English, in Spanish, in Italian, in whatever
Yeah.
language she chooses to speak in. But yeah, she's mesmerizing in this film, and her collaboration with Pedro is like legendary. So it seems apt that her first nomination should be for this. I think she should win for an Almodovar movie.
Mm.
Even if it wasn't Parallel Mothers, it should be whatever they do in the future, because I think they will I don't know how old Pedro is, but I hope like he continues making movies for another 50 years. The other thing that I want to say about this is like Pedro Almodovar is my favorite filmmaker. Like I love him so much. I love all of his movies. And I can't believe that he himself has won 2 Oscars, obviously, for All About My Mother as foreign language and Talk to Her as screenplay. But he only got am I wrong here? 2 actors nominated? Just
Yeah.
Penelope in Volver and Tony Banderas in Pain and Glory. That's absurd. It's really absurd when you look at his filmography and all the actors and performances that he gave with Cecilia Ross and All About My Mother. I think Blanca Portillo in this movie in Volver as Augustina is amazing
Certainly.
and should have been in supporting actress. So yeah, so I think the 2 things that come to mind is like I can't believe this was the first time people took Penelope Cruz seriously when she's been working about a decade then, if not more. And then like, is this just one of 2 nominations for Pedro's actors?
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically, Penelope does have 2 as this and Parallel
Oh,
Mothers,
Parallel Mothers. So yeah,
plus
so 3,
Pain and
yes. So
Glory.
he got
But
3
still,
actors
you know.
nominated, yes.
And also, he is 74 for the record. I just looked that up. So,
Okay, so let's hope we have at least 20 years of his
yes, I
work.
think we should. Yes. Yes. So for me, Penelope Cruz is such a dynamic actress and someone who I have really grown to respect and really love the more I've watched her and sort of seen her evolve and continue to thrive, even in films that I find to be very flawed, like Ferrari last year. Like, she is easily the best part of that, and just like such choices that she makes are always so fascinating. Same goes for Vicky Cristina Barcelona. Again, best part of that film. But yeah, when she does collaborate with Almodovar, it's so clear why she would keep coming back to him again and again. They're just so in sync, I think, as artists, and
Yeah.
kind of also like riding the line of melodrama, but very rarely going over the line. Like, it's such a tricky tone, but for the most part, I think they always nail it.
Yeah.
And I think Volver is a perfect example of that, where there's so much like soapy drama going on here. You know, we have this strong-willed woman at the center, and her daughter killed her father. Now she's covering up for her daughter. There's a ghost. There's a woman who's sick with cancer. Like, it could be very heightened in a way that's kind of silly, but I think she really holds it down so well, and she has such incredible confidence as this character, and is just so like fiercely committed to her daughter and just trying to move forward with her life without getting too bogged down in the past. And that can sometimes cause her to be kind of rude and blunt at times with people, you know, but sometimes it's in a caring way, and it just shows that she cares. Like, she's very sure of herself and nurturing and tough and direct, which I think is a Penelope Cruz specialty.
Yeah.
You know, especially when she's working with Almodovar. Like, you get just from her energy that like Raymunda is the boss between like her and her daughter and her sister, and it's just so lived in. Like, I find myself really believing her right away. There's no layer of like artifice there.
Yeah. I think she also does that thing that it's a Almodovar trademark in that he writes these long monologues for his actors
Yes.
where they tell the story, like, which with any other filmmaker, I'll be like, show me, don't tell. But with him, somehow it works. And especially when Penelope Cruz is like telling you a story about her parents, or how her dad abused her, or it's a long monologue, and she's in the middle of the frame, and the way that he's framing her and the way that she's reacting to his camera, and it's just her, and it's so amazing. Like, the monologue becomes this something that jumps out of you, and you're like carried in an emotional roller coaster with just somebody telling you a story and being filmed while doing that, which is something not a lot of actors can do and not a lot of directors can actually pull. So I think you're right, they both bring the best in each other, and this is their trademark thing. It's just these long monologues they do.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking of the very end of the film where her mother is doing this huge monologue about where she's been and what's happened to her and all that, and it is just trained on her face, and it's just incredible. And Penelope's reaction, it's just really wonderful stuff. Like, he really does trust especially his actresses, even more so than his actors. Right.
to do that. Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
we have to talk about Carmen Mora in this film, who was
Sure. Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
Pedro Almodovar's muse before Penelope Cruz. And I think they had a
Hmm.
rift. I'm not sure, but she didn't appear in a lot of his movies for like a decade or something. And then she came back with
Yeah.
this film. So this film, I think, was like Carmen Mora and Penelope Cruz together in an Almodovar film, I don't know if that at the time that wasn't like a big thing to me, but now that I've watched all of Almodovar movies,
Yeah.
I understand what a big, huge thing that was for Carmen Mora to be back and to play to be in the same movie with Cruz. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know why I came up with this comparison, but it's like Martin Scorsese being like, I got Leonardo DiCaprio and I got Robert De Niro. And
Yes,
like, these are my
exactly.
muses
Yes, totally.
of different generations. Yeah.
And he has been accused of like, oh, she's older, so now you got a new one, which is the same thing that happened to Scorsese or
Yeah.
Christian
Yep.
Petzold with Nina Hoss and Paula Beer. So it
Sure.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think Penelope is really, really incredible in the scene of Paula revealing to her that her father tried to rape her and that Paula threatened him with a knife and she stabbed him to death, and just the gradual lead up to realizing the gravity of what's happened and being so horrified that like this man like hurt her baby, and like she doesn't jump to blaming her daughter necessarily or getting angry at her. Like she is very sympathetic and like the mama bear instincts are kicking in. I love when she gets that look in her eyes where she's like convinced herself like, I'm just gonna cover this up for my daughter and I'm gonna take the blame away from her and just put it on me. And just like, the cleaning up of the blood. For some reason in moments like that, I'm really reminded of classic sort of women's melodrama in the tone, and really evoking like the Joan Crawford, Barbara Stanwyck kind of like type of melodrama of just being like, I'm going to sacrifice for my daughter and just be so committed to that, like single-minded focused on protecting her.
Yes. And can we also just give Penelope Cruz props for like for a few scenes in this movie, she has to act with a heavy freezer as her co-star. Um,
Yeah.
where she's pushing
True.
that, putting it in the car, getting it out, all of this stuff. And those scenes are really funny in that, yes, the freezer
Yeah.
contains the corpse of her dead husband, but also it's just the way that she acts. And it's very funny around, especially when people
Yeah.
come and like, and then it's like, anyway, I think the role also allows her, in addition to the monologues and the melodrama and all of
Hmm.
that, it allows her these small moments of comedy, and she's very fresh delivering that. Like you sort of
Oh
follow
yeah.
her in those things. And
Yeah.
I really just want to talk about how she is also just an amazing screen partner. Like I think you talked about the Carmen Mora monologue at the end, where her reactions are when they cut to her, it's like it deepens the story, it deepens the performance of Mora, but also with the young actress who plays her daughter, who I can't remember their name, with Blanca Portillo, who plays Augustina. Like they're and so it's no wonder the in Cannes this movie won Best Actress for
All the
of
women in the
all the
film. Yeah.
women in the film
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
and I think that's also just and in the Oscars it was only Penelope who was nominated, but I think that's also you justify that because she is the one constant scene partner for all of these other actresses, and it is her presence I think that sort of deepens the performances of the other actresses in this film. But I love them all. I'm especially Carmen
Absolutely.
and Blanca Portillo, just amazing
Yeah.
performances.
I think both should have contended more in supporting actress, just
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
But yes, going back to what you said, I love the dark comedy we get in the film. Like, even when she's like talking to Soleil on the phone and she kind of like, she sort of spins it like a half truth, like, Paco is gone, but not saying like he's died necessarily, implying like, oh, he left. And Soleil is like, oh, he'll come back and all that. And the way she just, like, Penelope just flatly is like, I doubt it is very funny. Just like moments of that of just like at a certain point the circumstances of what she's going through are so absurd that you do kind of laugh, but
Hmm.
not in a way that you're laughing at the movie. So again, just the great towing the line there. And she really covers her tracks so well to the point that it's like, your instincts are so sharp. It's like you've done all of this before, like bringing her refrigerator to the restaurant so like the film crew can see that they serve fresh food, even though that's just an excuse to kind of like cover up what's really back there.
Yeah.
But there's like such conviction in the way she talks to like these other women who help her at the restaurant. And it's that thing where it's like, if I'm one of those other women, I'm like, she seems to know what she's doing. She seems very confident. Like, I'm going to trust her. Why would I question it? In a
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
She just like throws herself into everything in a way that's like, you're a very convincing liar. Or at least not withholding, she's kind of withholding the truth of everything.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how there's this sort of pattern, I think, that starts to emerge where she's constantly trying to just like keep everything cool and like kick the can down the road as far as like telling the full truth, like again lying to her sister, but it's kind of a half truth where, yes, he's technically gone, but it's not the full story. And she finally reveals to her daughter that Paco wasn't actually her biological father. But I think she says a few times that like someday I'll tell you everything.
Yeah.
And there's this quality that to how she conducts herself that's like she's gradually gonna open up to people, but like only at her speed. And I think it sort of helps her to cope with some of those uncomfortable truths. And you could say that she kind of gets that from her mother as well, because she is also someone who is going to not reveal the truth until much later on, past the point of them thinking she's died.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like that Raymunda is so busy all the time. So this is, she's always on the move. Like in every scene, she's doing something with her body. She's like
a shark.
Yeah, she's pushing something. She's holding something. She's clapping. She's never still. And yet, somehow, we are able to follow her, and the performance is grounded and real, even though this woman is on the move the whole time. And I think that's also. I think maybe that was the start of sort of realizing for what a physical comedian she is, which then of course she delivers that with all her antics and big gestures in the Woody Allen film Vicky Cristina Barcelona a few years later, where she wins the Oscar. And I think it started here because she's always doing something with her hands, with her feet. She's walking, she's like doing something in almost every scene, except even in that scene where she's singing and she's clapping, and there is always a physical act that she's doing, and it just makes her so captivating to watch.
I agree. Yeah. And also the singing scene at the restaurant is another beautiful example of that, where she's singing for the crew. And it's so evocative the way she just like is pouring her heart out and singing this song that I think she learned from her mother when she was younger. And the moment that she sees her mother's ghost watching her from the car, and that moment of like disbelief almost, but then she sort of is like, oh, maybe my mind is playing tricks in a way. Like it's very emotional what she's able to do in that 3 or 4 minutes, because also I think her grief is kind of unresolved, and so it's interesting to watch that play out for her as someone who is so kind of stubborn and just like always on the move, but not fully processing the past and not knowing what the past is.
No, it's a great performance, and she's just magnificent in it. And I'm surprised she didn't like I guess Helen Mirren did win everything, but like like one critic award here or there. She was nominated everywhere she was supposed to be nominated, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, it was always these 5, right? Like everywhere pretty much.
It was really remarkable looking back on this. Literally, Critics' Choice, Golden Globe, SAG, BAFTA, Oscar, same 5.
Yes.
No variation. Yeah.
And I mean, they're very good performances, but also it just sort of like, these are some of the most nominated actresses in the Academy history. Like, so that's another reason. It's just like people will tick these names if they are in a movie they watched.
Right.
I mean, it was Penelope's first, but now she is probably in the same as Kate and Helen and
now
Meryl.
She has 4. She has 4 nominations now. All of them have at least 4 nominations, which is like, how many Oscar lineups have that?
Very few.
So it's a really, really beautiful performance, and I highly encourage people to check it out.
Yes. I think
Yeah,
everybody who's listening to us hopefully have watched this
sure,
film
yeah.
because why wouldn't
Yeah.
you?
Yes, yes. It is an actress sexual's dream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like every
As is
single
most of this
actress in
lineup.
this movie is
Yeah.
amazing. Like we're talking about
Yeah.
Penelope, and I think we talked about it, but every is really wonderful, all of them.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on to our next nominee. Here we go. Judi Dench in
Oh
Notes on
my,
a Scandal.
oh, where do I
You are
start?
smiling from ear to
Oh,
ear already.
like
Okay. Judi Dench getting her sixth Oscar nomination in 10 years. She has two more nominations after this, but this is sort of the end of this little era of Oscar love for Judi. But 2006 is huge for her. Not only does she have Notes on a Scandal, but she's also returning to the James Bond universe as M in Casino Royale, which is the first Daniel Craig film. So she's got the blockbuster franchise plus this art house hit at the end of the year. Really great time in her career. So I read that she had actually read the novel of Notes on a Scandal, which was published in 2003, and she was a big fan. And when she was actually offered to play this lead role of Barbara Covett in the adaptation, she said she was thrilled to be asked to play that woman, to try to find a humanity in that dreadful person. And this is indeed a very complicated character that is quite unlike a lot of her other nominations. So,
mhm.
Notes on a Scandal is set in London, and it centers on Barbara Covett, played by Judi, a veteran school teacher who is not married and kind of misanthropic in general. And she meets the new teacher, Sheba Hart, played by Kate Blanchett, and she quickly becomes an object of fascination for Barbara, and she befriends her. And then one night she catches Sheba having sex with a 15-year-old student, which leads to Barbara essentially blackmailing Sheba to become closer to her in exchange for Barbara not turning her in. And we see how Barbara's possessiveness over Sheba, who is married with kids, has a profound and disturbing effect on Sheba's life. I am so excited to get into this with you. Judi Dench, Notes on a Scandal. Tell me your thoughts.
Oh, where do I start with this
I
performance?
know.
So first of all, I love Judi Dench a lot. I think she
Yes.
is a wonderful, wonderful actor. And I think this is her best performance. And it's just perfect because she takes this woman who I think could have been this malevolent one-note villain because
Mm-hmm.
in anybody else's hands and makes her complicated and watchable and somebody you kind of root for. Like I root for Barbara Covett. I think mostly because Judy's so amazing in it. Although she is a stalker, she is, what's the word? The bad kind of stalker. What is the word?
I mean, usually stalkers are bad, so
Yes, yes, but yeah, yeah, she's a stalker. She's somebody who manipulates people, who's somebody who
yeah.
is, she is obviously she's deeply homophobic against herself. I think this is a woman who probably is queer, or is a lesbian, but does not want to admit
Mm-hmm.
that and is really homophobic. And so it's a very complicated character, and I think Judi brings all that out. And also, it's just like there are so many lines in this movie. Like I think there are two movies that I remember the line delivery. It's this and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Like when Betty Davis lines in those movies are amazing, and I think Judy's here are I want to be
Yeah.
called the pig in knickers by Judi, or you're not young.
No,
Um,
not young.
yes, exactly. I mean, I would not even attempt to do Judi, but
I know.
yes, that one is amazing. Or like the one they'll fly by when she's like, I could go to prison, and
They'll fly
they'll
by.
fly
Yeah.
by. And the clipped English accent, it's the very
Mm-hmm.
specific sort of North London sort of like woman teacher thing. There's just so many things, and it's just such a fun performance to watch. Like as somebody who loves acting, it's so fun. Like that to just hear the cadence of her voice is fun. To see her sort of like talk about the jolt when a what do you call it, a bus driver touches her, and the jolt she feels in her groin. And I'm just like, and as she's talking, you imagining all these things, which is also things you don't hear in a lot of movies, but she makes them so real. And she plays loneliness in a way that's very touching, but also like she doesn't sand off the edges of this character to make her likable. Like this is an awful person, and we know her for being that, but we still love her because she shows us this is part of this loneliness and internal homophobia. And I can't imagine anybody else doing this role. And I'm blabbering because I love this performance so much, and I love Judi so much. She's cast in a lot of like movies as the doddering older woman now because of her age, and like Belfast, for example. But I think here she's just vicious, and I want to see vicious Judi Dench more often. I think she's got it in her, and I'm so happy she got to this chance to like just completely dominate this movie. Like I love Kate Blanchett and she's my favorite actress, but like Judi is dominating in this movie. Like and that's also the dynamic of the two characters. It's just Barbara Covet is she was like stupid and wispy and whatever. And it's a testament to both actresses in that they didn't soften that, and that Kate didn't try to like steal scenes from her, because why would you do that? Which she is, as we've seen Tar, we know she can steal scenes from everyone. But here, they understood the dynamic between these two characters, and one has to be weak, one has to be dominant, and that's the only way the dynamic here works. So I think also the duet is what makes this movie watchable. But the duet, and it's like a boxing match that's won by Barbara. But Sheba puts a good fight, but Barbara wins. And I think that's why I love watching this movie, because it's like, they're coming at each other. I mean, there is the one big scene where where they're literally coming at each other and hit, all of that. But they are coming at each other in every scene from the very beginning. And that's what makes it fun. Like, I don't think there is, except maybe whatever happened to Baby Jane, that you just see actresses going at each other like this or the whole movie.
That comparison is very apt, because it's a similar dynamic in that movie where
Yeah.
Bette Davis is the dom there, and Joan Crawford is the sub or whatever,
Yeah.
So it's really, it would be a great double feature. But incredible work from Judi. This is also my favorite performance she's ever given. And this is where I feel like her voice is really her superpower, because so much of the film is in kind of narration, and she narrates her diary entries and her little observations. And for as annoying and hand-holding as narration can be in a lot of films, this is one where I love that it's here, and it's because of just how wicked she is in her voice as she's commenting on other people and their stupidity, and how she kind of feels so above them. And it's so delicious just to hear her kind of commentary throughout all of this. But then like the actual performance is so full-bodied, and she has such convictions and like certainty that there's never any doubt, I think, how she is going to react in certain situations, like being sort of uncomfortable with Sheba's family, or like when she starts to soften a little bit whenever Sheba shows any sort of affection, or also like seeing these other teachers trying to make a move on Sheba and sort of rolling her eyes about them, even like thinking that they have a shot with her. So she's so precise, I think, in showing how Barbara is feeling, and showing how she uses her sharpness and her intellect kind of like a weapon to survive and to feel morally superior to people. But then even if like she only rarely comments on it, there is also this profound self-loathing, I think, and loneliness that is underneath all of that, of just feeling kind of unloved and unfulfilled. And she's kind of aware of that weakness, but that just makes her harsh feelings towards people all that much stronger. And I can imagine she had so much fun diving into this character and like what makes her tick, and playing off of Kate and them going back and forth. Like it's live theater almost, and it's just so funny, such an engaging performance that it feels like it's sort of taking all the things we love about Judi prior to this, and that sharpness and a little bit of that like wicked, like naughty old lady type of thing, and just like doubling down and making it vicious, like you said, and making it darker and meaner, and really giving her a script that is fully worthy of her, compared to like something like Mrs. Henderson Presents, which is like, that's great, but she can do that in her sleep. This is like a real challenge,
Yeah. I know the masterpiece scene is the big confrontation between her and Kate later in the film. But I also love the scene with Phil Davis as the teacher who kind of likes Sheba. And that's the scene where she finally puts her plan into motion. And you can see like Barbara relishing the power that she has. And, she's smoking in that scene and sitting in her kitchen and sort of putting this thing, she's putting ideas into his head, knowing exactly, because she knows she's superior to all of these people. They're very stupid. They're like her little puppets. So she knows exactly what she's saying to him and in her tone, and she knows exactly how he's gonna act. And that's like such a great scene for Judi, because you're right. Her voice is her superpower here. I love that you said that. And in that scene, her voice carries everything. She's so precise, like you said, in telling him exactly what to do, or using her words, knowing exactly how he's gonna act. And she's just so wonderful in it. It's the only non-Kate scene that I love.
Fair enough. Yeah. This might be also a good place to talk about. Do we think Cate Blanchett is a co-lead with Judi?
I think she is, in terms of like what do you call it? Screen time or whatever.
Yeah.
But who cares? Like in the end, like I understand. Like like we just talked. Barbara was the dom and Sheba was the sub. So it's fine to put her in supporting. She lost the match, and for that she's in supporting.
I suppose that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of what happened with Kate and Rooney Mara.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, definitely Kate is the dom and Carol, and Rooney's the sub, so Rooney is in supporting.
Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to know your thoughts on that, because you are a Kate stan, of course. But yes, I also really like the scenes where like she's trying to make an effort to be a little more sweet and cheerful with Sheba, but it's like a little forced, because it's just not her natural personality.
Yeah.
Especially in that unbearably awkward sequence after she first invites Barbara to lunch at her house and meets her family, and just they're sort of dancing after the dinner and everything, and Barbara's just sitting there with such discomfort on her face and feeling so separate from what she calls like the bourgeoisie.
Oh yeah. She has such contempt for everyone. Yes. Even Sheba, who supposedly she loves.
Right. Yeah. But she is kind of entranced by her at the same time, and just her kind of elegance, because that's, it's Cate Blanchett. So, I understand. But that line when like Sheba talks about the difference between the life as you dream it and life as it is, and Barbara has this little twinkle in her eye, and she's like, I know exactly what you mean. Like, yeah. She's totally hooked in, I think, from that moment on.
Yeah. Also, that scene I love, because Sheba is very delusional. Like, it's just like, Sheba, I don't know what you're talking about. You're so delusional and stupid. But also, Barbara is too. And like, they are sort of like meeting in the middle in their delusion with what this is, and what their lives are. And it's a good scene because of that.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, but I mean, like, after the whole thing of witnessing the incident with Sheba, with the student, and being kind of horrified, but then like quickly realizing, oh, like there's an opportunity here, that just by doing nothing, I could gain everything. So she says something like that. So the way she manipulates her way to getting Sheba to basically be friends with her, almost by blackmail, essentially, being like, well, you have to end the affair immediately, and like making her promise. And when Sheba's like, yeah, but, and then Barbara's like, I can't help you if you don't promise. And there's a fun sort of wickedness, but it's like just convincing enough that Sheba's like, okay, maybe you do have my best intentions at heart, that it's sort of believable that Sheba would believe her to be at least a bit of an ally there. For me, it is very reminiscent of some of Glenn and her manipulations in Dangerous Liaisons.
Oh,
in that
yeah.
way for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also just want to say, I love so many scenes of Judi in this movie, but I love the funny ones. The one that comes to mind is one that I really love. It's later in the movie after they've had their big fight, and they're talking about Sheba's vacation home in France. And then she was says something like, "We never invite you to the Dordain." And she's like, "Oh, but you specifically said if I happen to be France, I should drop in." And she was like, "We didn't mean it." And then Judy, so funny. She's like, "Well, fine, I won't come." I mean, I obviously not doing any of these lines justice, but just go watch that scene when she says, "Well, fine, I won't come." And she's so funny in that
Yeah.
little bit of just like, you kind of realize like the smallness of this woman's world, that some offhand comment from Sheba becomes the center of her life.
Yeah.
But also it's the line delivery is so funny, and I love it. Judi Dench is a
Yeah.
genius, and her genius is in
Oh yeah.
display in this movie.
Yeah. I can just imagine Judy's script being so marked up with like exactly the tone and the emphasis of like where she needs to be with each line. It's so precise.
Well, there is a funny story about that. There is a video that I think I'll send you after this, where Kate is talking about how on the first day of shooting this, she's like talking to Judy about a scene, and she's like, "We should talk to the screenwriter about the scene to maybe make it whatever, more whatever." And then Judy says to her, "Oh, well, I didn't read it." And she's like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, I didn't read the script. I just wanted to work with you and Richard." And it's like,
Oh, there you
so
go.
I mean,
That's
that's
funny.
sort of like, I think the performance is so brilliant because we do think she's very precise, and we do, but
Fair
maybe
enough.
she's
Yeah.
just like, she just walks into set and just becomes Barbara. Like, I mean, if Kate Blanchett is to be
I like that.
believed, that's what happened.
Yeah, I believe her. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, you would never tell that she hadn't like studied this over and over again. But yes, as you mentioned earlier, the whole "you're not young" moment is iconic.
Yeah.
Realizing of like that Sheba is still carrying on this affair with the boy, just such a masterclass. And even like her mocking tone when like Sheba is kind of giving little excuses and she's like, "What, you're in love?" It's just like so bitchy in the best way.
Yeah.
And the fact that she says, "You're not young, I say this to help you,"
Yeah. Oh
like
my
is
God.
another like,
Perfection.
even if it's not like overtly funny, it's just like, I say this to help you. It's like, I'm just trying to help, that's all. Also, another scene I think is great in that respect is after Barbara's cat dies, and she basically blackmails Sheba again into coming over to comfort her, even though Sheba says she has to attend this play that her son is in. And just that wicked little tone she takes when she's like, "Don't play the good mother with me."
Oh my God.
It's
Yes.
so
Um,
delicious.
Yeah, that scene
Yeah.
is, I think, is maybe Kate's best scene. I mean, people remember for Kate like the
Yeah.
big, breakdown that she has in front of Barbara's house, who's the photographers
Yeah.
and whatever. But I think that scene where she's kind of realizes that this woman can destroy her life and she's being blackmailed, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, she wants to be a mother and like take her son to display and knows that how important that is to him. And she's like torn. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe her best moment because that's finally we sort of a little bit understand what drives Sheba, and because she was so stupid. She's just the most stupid character Kate Blanchett has ever played, and she always plays smart women. And this is the only time she's been stupid on film.
I know. Yeah. Usually she is the dumb one that you kind of
Yes.
glom onto, but here she is playing like the just the innocent little ingenue almost in a way, which is
Yeah.
fascinating to see at this stage in her career. But yes, and to go back to that scene you mentioned where she's talking to the other teacher about it is so good and delicious. But it's like the way she kind of couches it in being like, "Oh, just, playground gossip," and is kind of like trying to absolve herself as being basically an accomplice of sorts, and just delighting in parceling out little morsels of information, being like, "Oh, it's just gossip," but also like, here's the specific boy that it is, and just like tossing it off. It's so brilliant. And she really is like delighting in being able to do her little Machiavellian sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
she's wonderful in it. And what an amazing film. I want to just get off right now and we'll go watch it again.
I know it's a brisk 90 minutes,
Yeah.
and like watching it again, I'm like, damn, this movie never slows down. Like,
Oh,
this is just like a moving train the
yeah.
whole time.
What an
I
amazing
love it.
script. Let's give Patrick
Yeah,
Marber,
Patrick Marber.
who is a playwright and famous for Closer, but he adapted this
Yeah.
novel, and what an amazing script. Like this script, like these lines that we keep repeating, the lines are just, they fly off. Like she says they'll fly
Mhm.
by, but I feel like the whole thing is so buoyant, like these wonderful lines of dialogue, and these actors just go deep and relish them. What an amazing dialogue writer. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just the way the climax that, we've mentioned the big climax several times already, but the way that amps up with the back and forth between them, they're both so on point, and I kind of get chills watching that scene every time I see it, especially
Yeah.
because like the Philip Glass score is just like over cranked to 11 and
Yes.
the tension is fully boiling over. Like it's like live theater, like I said.
It
So
is. And there's so
yeah.
many memorable lines. Do you want to fuck me, Barbara? Like that one
Wanna
comes to.
fuck me, Barbara? Yes.
Oh, and oh God.
And
And
then Kate going out into the crowd and being like, "Here I am."
yeah. And then when Barbara says, I only have tender feelings for you. I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it's so good.
Ugh, I want to watch it again too. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant stuff. It's such a delight. I would love to see her in a role like this again. I know she's up there in age
Yeah.
now, and she's mentioned that her eyesight isn't what it used to be. So
Well, apparently she doesn't read scripts, so just tell her what to
That's
say
true.
right before and she'll do it.
and she'll do it ably. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think she's got one more of these in her. Notes on a Scandal 2. Let's see what Barbara Covett is up to next.
Yeah.
Okay, so unless you have anything else, we can move on.
I just want to say in 2006, this wasn't my favorite film of the five, but I think
Right.
this might be my favorite film of all time now.
Wow.
I think the screenplay is perfect. I think the performances are perfect. I think it's rewatchable. You watch two of the best screen actors going at it together. Like, what more do you want? So, fuck you, Quentin Tarantino. Remember when he said all these Kate Blanchett movies like Note 7 Scandal, who rewatches them? I'm like, me. That's who's rewatching them. Who's rewatching them all the time? I'm like, me.
Yes.
Yeah. I know people like it's not Pulp Fiction where all the bros quote, but this is a movie that I quote, that I'm sure you quote, that a lot of people we know and love and our friends quote all the time to each other. And
even people who I know haven't seen it before.
Yes, totally.
I'll say certain lines, even though I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yes, and it should be treated like a Pulp Fiction or what's the Aaron Sorkin one that all the boys love to
The Social Network.
The Social Network. Like, I think the script is as sharp as that and the performance is as sharp as that, even sharper. So this film is slept on. I think it's a masterpiece, and I think it should be treated as the masterpiece that it is. I think the two things against it, that why it's not treated as a masterpiece, is because it's about women, of course. And the other thing is that Richard Ayer, who's a director, is not really like a film director. It's not Quentin Tarantino, David Fincher, but like he directed the shit out of this one. So I don't know. Anyway, Notes of a Scandal, masterpiece. Criterion, you should put in the Criterion, and I need to write the essay because nobody knows really this movie more than I do.
A pleasure to come to your TED Talk. Yes, absolutely. Cosign 100%. This should have won adapted screenplay.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. What won that year? That was
The Departed.
The Departed won screenplay too? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it didn't deserve screenplay. Yeah, this should have won.
Yep. All right. Well, on that note, that was very fun. Let's move on to Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada. Another fun one.
Yeah.
So here we have Meryl getting her 14th Oscar nomination, but it's her first in lead since Music of the Heart in 1999. So we've had a little bit of a break covering her lead nominations on this show, but now it's like full steam ahead from here on out, and we'll be talking about her pretty much every other episode from here on out. So in between Music of the Heart and The Devil Wears Prada, she is of course keeping as busy as ever, but she's really starting to move into another phase of her career. She was already kind of a legend, but now it's like she's taken on this status as like the queen of Hollywood of sorts, and really cementing her legacy and becoming more popular than ever. And a lot of it comes down to her choices. She takes on this very fun role in Adaptation, which nets her her first supporting actress nomination since her win for Kramer versus Kramer. She has multiple roles in the TV adaptation of Angels in America, which wins her an Emmy for that, sweeps award season for that. She was also in The Hours in 2002, art house hit, a rare Oscar miss for her performance at least. But
yeah, what happened there? I'm so surprised.
I have no idea. Yeah, but she is also in the remake of The Manchurian Candidate, which is kind of a miss. Prime, A Prairie Home Companion, but then The Devil Wears Prada is where she gets this huge sort of reinvigoration of sorts for a wide audience. And this is now one of her most recognized roles, at least in terms of the general public's awareness of her work. So Devil Wears Prada, based on the novel by Lauren Weisberger about a journalist named Andrea, or Andy for short, who is hired to work as the assistant of Miranda Priestley, the very demanding editor-in-chief of a fashion magazine called Runway, and Andy struggles to keep up with her demands. And Anne Hathaway plays Andy, Meryl plays Miranda, and we see how Andy doesn't really take fashion seriously at first, but Miranda argues for the consideration that she's put into it, and Andy gets a makeover and starts taking her job more seriously, which threatens her terrible boyfriend, and Miranda has this growing respect for Andy as she dedicates herself to the job. So this is a big one. Tell me your thoughts on Meryl overall and her, at this point, fully iconic performance in The Devil Wears Prada.
I think also this was like the birth of Meryl Streep box office star, right? Because this was a huge hit, and then post that she had huge hits with Mamma Mia, with Julie and Julia, with It's Complicated. So, you know, these sort of like lighter comedies. And so for a few years, there maybe about a decade and a half, she would do the summer lighter movie. And then we'll do like the winter, you know, big drama based on a
Oscar play
like Doubt or August Osage County or whatever. She's like, I'm taking the best of Broadway, but also I am doing the you know, the lighter comedy summer movie. And so it's I think it cemented her later career as, you know, she was an icon. She was a huge box office hit star in the 80s. Like nobody could make Out of Africa the biggest movie of the year except Meryl Streep. So it's not like she wasn't a box office star before, but to be a box office star in your late 50s is very different than being a box office star in your early 30s. And so and yeah, I love this movie, and it was like this was probably box office wise the biggest hit of these movies. So it was the movie that most people saw, but it also very fun and iconic, and we remember. Similar to Notes in a Scandal, Meryl has all the best lines, except maybe Emily Blunt has a couple of them. If I was Anne Hathaway, I would sue, because I don't think she has even one memorable line in this movie.
She really doesn't.
Between Meryl and Emily Blunt, like those, that's who we remember. Or
Stanley Tucci even.
Yeah, totally. But Meryl is just like so just commanding in this role. And when you hear like, oh, she's playing Vogue editor or whatever, what is that woman's name?
Anna Wintour.
And you kind of think that you know what it's going to be, but it's completely not. Obviously, Meryl Streep, another genius. Like, she's not going to give you just like what you expect. And so the role is funny. And I remember this thing that she said that she based it on Clint Eastwood, who directed her a few years before that in, of course, The Bridges of Madison County. And she said when she was on set with him, he was very powerful and the most powerful man on that set, obviously. And she noticed that he never raises his voice. He's very quiet, and people have to strain to hear him. But of course, nobody asks him to repeat himself. So people strain to hear him, and that's where he derives his power. And that's how she made Miranda Priestley that way. You know, she's always very precise and very quiet, and you know, she never yells or screams, and that's kind of what we were expecting. I think we were expecting some yelling, screaming boss from hell, but you get this woman, the devil, exactly. But you get this very sort of like precise, quiet woman who knows exactly what she wants and how to get it. And Meryl is delightful. in it. Very funny. She is a
Mhm.
comedian and she's so funny in it. But also, it's Meryl Streep. So you get the scene without the makeup where she takes the mask off, and now you have, this woman is a human being and she has feelings and all of that. And only Meryl Streep can make you like feel sorry for an Anna Wintour like character. So there we go.
Right. There we go. Yeah, that's the power of Meryl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those performances that is so everywhere in the culture and so quoted and analyzed on Twitter and even TikTok and like Instagram, just like generally in real life. It's so everywhere and it's almost taken on a life of its own. And it's like, what would I even add to the discussion at this point? Like everyone
I
already kind
know.
of knows.
Yeah. And now they're
But
making
this
a
is,
sequel too, right? That was just announced.
yes,
Yeah. I don't
yes.
know that I
I
want
don't
that,
know.
but whatever. I'll watch it.
No, of course, yes, and give it a polite 3 stars probably. But anyway, yeah, this is one where I feel like, again, I didn't even really need to take notes because I just knew so much of this already, having seen it so many times and, seeing everyone tweeting about it all the time. So there was nothing particularly new that I picked up on this rewatch, but that doesn't make it to me any less impactful. Like it really is so locked in from her very first scene, and you feel how much fun she's having, like her entrance even in the elevator and just like taking the sunglasses off, just like totally knowing her power. And again, yeah, her just talking in that very even tone, that calm manner, all her demands that she's listing off to Emily, and just walking and talking and never slowing down, never repeating herself, expecting Emily to keep up with her. Yeah, it's a very clear choice that she's making, but it's so smart, and it really allows Meryl to lean into one of my favorite sides of Meryl, which is her sarcasm, which we tend to see come out a lot at like award shows and big interviews and public events, and just like that even tone of voice and kind of like the dry humor. It does make you lean in and really consider what she's saying, which is how we can imagine this woman got her way to the top, is by really commanding that attention and having such sharp instincts, and like no word is out of place. Like you're listening to every single thing she says because she has that kind of quiet but powerful energy.
Yeah.
So it is just very smart. And like I said, it is so overanalyzed that a lot of this feels kind of redundant, but it doesn't make it any less impressive.
I mean, yeah, she's so impressive in it. And she's even impressive in the hubris. Like I remember the last scene where
Yes.
everybody wants to be us, that just the way that she
Everybody
delivered.
wants this.
Yeah,
Yes.
or everybody wants this or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah. Yeah.
you get the hubris of this woman that she actually does believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And Meryl
Yeah.
is just so good at playing. It's sort of like the power is not the sort of power you expect. It's the power comes from somewhere, like from within her. Like she's just the way she enters the room. Like I think every time that where she throws her coats, or
Yeah.
in the cerulean famous scene, the way she's just walking slowly, or when she just looks around and turns her head, why is nobody ready, or whatever, that the way she says ready.
Ready.
It's
Yes.
perfection. Like it's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's funny, it's smart, it's iconic for a reason, and people talk about it all the time for a reason, because
Yeah.
there is just so much that she's giving in every scene.
Yeah. And even just that first meeting with Andy and just like reading the magazine sort of like casually and barely making eye contact, it's all such a power move to show that her time is like the most valuable, and just the withering way that she says, no, no, that wasn't a question. It's just so casually devastating.
Yeah.
And of course, her famous catchphrase, that's all.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like it's really still holds up. And I feel like she had this way at this time of creating this totally new kind of boss character on film, I think. And it does sound kind of simple now, but just having that tone of never raising her voice, that is, that was innovative, I think, at the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
especially for a female boss on screen. But yes, the cerulean monologue is a work of art, I think. The way she doesn't hurry through that at all, and it's clearly like she's thought about this very
Hmm.
intently. Like she knows how to combat people who like dismiss her work and the whole fashion industry as being trivial. And she's really like put a lot of thought and passion into this. Just the way she says like, oh, this stuff. Oh, I see. You think this has nothing to do with you. And just goes off. And like I said, just being so patient with the way she doles this out. Like, it is a huge block of text in the script.
Oh, yeah.
But she takes her time with it. And again, you're just riveted from start to finish.
Yep.
I do think you find yourself sort of siding with her in that moment,
Oh,
which
yeah.
you don't often get in the film because of how much of it is from Andy's perspective. But it's true, because like Andy is acting like she's so above it all, but there is an entire industry here and a lot of moving parts that really impact people's lives more than they even know, and a lot of them take pride in their work. And so I just love the sort of casual confidence there. And it does, like, it's clear like this hits a nerve for her. Like, this is again a discussion she's probably had a lot with people, but she also doesn't show that like she's insecure necessarily about it. Like, she just has this quick, ready answer to like totally like dismiss all of those concerns.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. I like what you said about casual confidence. I think you nailed it there. Because, you also said, she's patient and doesn't hurry, and yes, all of that. But also, I don't think she even enunciates that well in this scene. Like, sometimes she just throws the words off her mouth. Like, she doesn't care whether people hear her or whether they understand what she's saying or they get every word. Like, she's not trying to do that. She's just like, she's so confident that it's a throwaway for her, and that makes it more impactful.
Absolutely, yes. It's really, really, again, so unique, I think, and to do that in a way that to not have the vocal performance of it feel dull necessarily, or just like tuning her out. Like, it is a fine line, I think. But yes, of course, as we see Andy starting to take her job more seriously, there is that growing mutual respect. Like, when she finds out that Andy, like, I don't remember what it was, but she did a certain task without Miranda having to ask her to do so beforehand. And she looks at Andy sort of like impressed, but she doesn't really show it or like say, oh my God, wow, thank you for thinking of that. It's just like, like, because that is just what she expects of her assistants and everything, even though it's clear like, oh, okay, finally we're getting somewhere and you're actually taking this seriously. I love that the fact that she doesn't actually, I mean, this is more of a script thing than a performance, but the way she channels how like she's never really going to be effusive in like praising people just for doing their job, because as they say in Mad Men, that's what the money's for.
Yeah,
it's just like, this is what is expected of her, so like, that's it.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the other famous line in the movie where she's like, florals for spring, groundbreaking. I mean, that's such and I think we should give the screenplay credit for that, because that's such a good line that I think, any movie star could have delivered that well. But, it's always delicious to hear it in Meryl's tones, of course.
Yes, in that sarcasm that I love.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, with so much of the film also being about Andy, we ultimately only get a limited window, I think, into Miranda as a person. So there has often been the talk, not to get into boring category discussion again, but of like, is she lead? Is she supporting? I don't know if you had a take on that too.
I mean, come on, Miranda Priestley supporting, like, it just doesn't like, it doesn't fit. No. Like, who do you leave this movie remembering? Who are we talking about? Like, we're talking about
certainly not Andy.
Exactly. Miranda Priestley. Like, that is the lead of the movie. Yeah. Yes, Andy's sort of like the audience surrogate, but that doesn't make her the lead. I mean, she's another lead. There can be two leads, but yeah. It's Miranda's movie from beginning to end, and it's because the character is dominant, because Meryl is amazing in it. I mean, the supporting performance that should have been nominated is Emily Blunt, obviously, but she became a movie star, so she's fine too.
She's fine. Yes. No, I agree. And also, like, people of course talk about the screen time factor, but when so much of the film is surrounded, even when she isn't on screen, by like her presence and people talking about her, about Miranda.
Yeah. It's all about Miranda. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It all revolves around her. So that's why when we get into like that screen time discussion, it's a little bit like, that's not the whole picture here.
Yeah, that's why I don't like the people with stopwatches. I'm just like, stop doing that. It's art is subjective. Let's have a real discussion like you and I are having now. That's a good This is a good discussion. Don't come at me with a stopwatch.
I was promised there wouldn't be math. So anyway.
Right? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Meryl and Miranda instead of like how many fucking minutes.
And seconds too. Anyway, her scene out of makeup, of course, is excellent, which starts with another famous line of saying, "By all means, move at a glacial pace." You know how that thrills me. Which I have absolutely quoted.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, of course.
But of course, she is gradually revealing that at this event, there will be no Stephen, her husband, at this event because they're getting a divorce. And there is a real hurt, I think, in her eyes and in her voice that this is just another thing that the tabloids are going to talk about with me and write about in a negative way. And you're kind of seeing unfortunately, the sort of personal cost of being in this society that's being a woman in power and how that can sometimes lead to problems in your personal life. It's a really lovely scene. And yes, script wise, maybe it's a little formulaic that we get the humanizing moment late in the movie where you come to appreciate and understand the quote unquote villain of the film. But she plays it really beautifully. I think that's kind of the clinching Oscar moment for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a scene that definitely, you're right. It clinched her the nomination because, comedy is never taken seriously at the Oscars. And so the rest of the scenes can all be like, oh, Meryl is being fun. Meryl is being, whatever, light comedy. But this is the scene where she brings out the pesos. She gives us the complicated backstory of this character and all of that. And yes, she clinched the nomination definitely with that scene. Although I have to say this is maybe she's obviously great, but this is maybe the scene where what we expected to see from a Meryl Streep performance actually happens. This is an expected Streep moment as opposed to the rest of the movie, which is completely unexpected and we haven't seen her do before.
That's a very good point. Yeah. And I think in the end of the film, of course, that chilling look that she gives Andy from across the street at the end, now having parted ways, and knowing that Andy was probably not meant for the fashion industry, but that she worked really hard and had a kind of tenacity that Miranda has. Just that little smile and recognition in the limo to herself, I think, is a beautiful little capper at the end of the film. And showing that even if they'll never work together and cross paths very much ever again, there was a change a little bit in both of them. It sounds very cheesy as I'm describing it, but it's just a really lovely, wistful smile that she gives at the end. Yeah. Nice little grace note.
Yes. No, Meryl is amazing. There's a reason she's the actress. There's a reason she has shaped, I think, the way that we react.
Yeah.
I think Americans do Meryl's. When I see someone touching their face, I'm like, oh my God, you're doing Meryl. You probably watched all her movies.
Yeah.
I think, we learn to how to react to different things watching Meryl Streep because she's a very expressive actor and she's been the dominant American actress of the 20th and 21st century. So
for sure. Yeah, I definitely see people like Jessica Chastain being kind of molded by what Meryl does.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
I'm not talking about other actors because I think she definitely influenced other actors. I'm just talking about real people like me and you. Sometimes, I'll just watch somebody react and Meryl moment.
Yeah, she is kind of the standard.
Yeah, totally. And this is the movie that gave her the second wind or the third wind of her multifaceted long career. Yeah.
And I think this is what kickstarted the drive to get her a third Oscar.
Yes.
This performance.
Yeah. And it should have maybe been this. I don't know. But,
Maybe.
Yes.
There were a few choices that could have been made before the Iron Lady.
Yes, totally.
Just to preview
coming
episodes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so let's move on to our final losing nominee, Kate Winslet in Little Children. All right, so Kate Winslet gets her 5th Oscar nomination for Little Children, and as a reminder, she has just barely entered her 30s, so she was really racking up these nominations left and right at a pretty early stage in her career, building that momentum even more to finally get that Oscar 2 years later. So in between Eternal Sunshine and Little Children, it's only 2 years, so not too much, but she gets an Emmy nomination for her guest appearance on Extras, where she famously plays a version of herself taking on a role in a Holocaust drama in order to win an Oscar, which is just the best dramatic irony.
I can't believe that actually happened before the reader. Like, it's
so funny.
Yeah.
It's truly a self-fulfilling prophecy. But yeah, then in 2006, she's in Little Children. She's in All the King's Men, which is kind of like classic This Had Oscar buzz. Flushed Away, this animated film, and The Holiday. So she's really doing a lot of different things, really thriving. And with Little Children, she is working with Todd Field, our beloved Todd Field, which we last talked about him for his first film, In the Bedroom, with Sissy Spacek. Now here he is getting his next leading lady an Oscar nomination.
Has he gotten all his leading ladies Best Actress nominations?
Yeah.
Wow. Look at Todd Field. Wow, that is amazing. Yep. What's going to be the next one? Hopefully it's not another 10 years or whatever.
I know. I'm just going to throw it out there. Glenn Close worked with Todd Field. Anyway. So, yes. But Little Children is a suburban domestic drama based on the novel by Tom Perrotta. And this is Tom Perrotta adapting his book with Todd Field. And it's about a small suburb in Boston where the threat of a sex offender in the neighborhood has everyone on edge. We also meet Sarah, Kate Winslet, who lives in the neighborhood with her husband and their young daughter. Her marriage is sort of falling apart, especially after she catches him pleasuring himself to some stuff on the internet. And one day she meets this stay-at-home dad, Brad, Patrick Wilson, who's very handsome, and none of the other mothers in the park are brave enough to talk to him, but Sarah decides she is. And once she breaks the ice, they develop an intense connection that becomes a full-blown affair. And naturally, this is complicated by the fact that both of them are married to other people, and they struggle to keep up their affair as other people begin to catch on. So excited to talk about this with you again, Murtada. I know we had fun doing a deep dive into this film on your show, Sundays with Kate, a few years ago. But yeah, tell me your relationship with Kate Winslet as an actress and her performance here.
So during the 2000s, it was always Kate and Kate. I'm like, which is my favorite Kate? Well, now I do have a favorite Kate, which is K with a C, not with a K. But I do love the K with a K too. And she is, like I said at the beginning of this, so add Meryl and Penelope, and she as some of my favorite actresses of all time, and of course Judi. I love Kate Winslet, and I think one of the things that makes her a distinctive screen persona is that she is able to play real women, everyday women, in a way that other actresses don't, because movie stars by nature are not like everyday people. They are extraterrestrial beings. But Kate Winslet is a movie star who is actually able to play someone you would think was your neighbor or your sister or your friend. And in this movie, it's one where she proves that, where she plays this sort of harried housewife who is burdened by her demanding young child and longing for some love and attention from her husband, who's somewhere else, and meets this man who she thinks is out of her league. I don't know why, but she is believable as, she's Kate Winslet. Nobody should be out of her league, but she is believable as somebody who thinks this guy is out of her league. And it's a very, grounded, rooted in reality performance. And that's the best. Those are the best kind of performances that she does, which she did recently in Mare of Easttown too. That just middle-aged mother trying to get to the end of the day. And I think this is maybe the first time she played that part at an earlier stage.
Good point.
Yeah, and she's wonderful in it, and she completely dominates this film. She's very watchable. She has this amazing face that can be still, and yet you read so much on it. And I think she gets a lot of close-ups in this film, and you get to sort of understand this woman who doesn't even understand herself, I think. But we get to understand her because of the performance. Yeah, I think she's really wonderful in it. The movie was kind of also like notes, and it's kind of like a late year release, whatever. And I think maybe if it was released early, she would have should have maybe gotten a little bit more attention. I think she mostly got the nomination because she was Kate Winslet in a Todd Field film, but it's also really a worthy performance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I find this movie also so fascinating, as we've talked about. And I love how it really has this kind of unnerving energy that sort of is propelling it forward. Like, you would still characterize this as like a domestic drama, suburban drama, whatever, but it really feels kind of like a thriller or like a horror film almost, with the sort of eerie narration, and the sound is really interesting. It's very evocative, and I think it really gets under your skin, not unlike in the bedroom and not unlike Tar in that way, uh, in a way that like not a lot of films in this genre really do for me. And it's why he's such a brilliant filmmaker, because he really puts you in the mindset of his characters, and especially here where there's like such a paranoia and fear in the air. And I think he and Kate Winslet are really on the same page when it comes to the tone and like the slightly satirical quality here, that feeling kind of unnerved in suburbia, but still kind of trying to press forward anyway. Like, it's shown right away that she's a bit of an outcast among this group of like housewives in her neighborhood. And I think there is also an inherent sort of edge and a rebellious quality to Kate Winslet that makes it easy to buy her as this person.
Hmm.
And it's like she's trying to get along with them, but this group of women, at least on the surface, seem to like they have it all together. And it's like the one that gives her advice about remembering to pack snacks, and Sarah just kind of like sasses back, "Thank you, that's a really helpful suggestion," with a tone that is just like just believable enough to not cause a fuss, but is like totally passive aggressive. Same thing where like the women are talking about the sex offender Ronnie, and that same other housewife says he should be castrated, and Sarah is just like, nail his penis to the entrance of the elementary school, with that great sort of sarcastic
Yeah.
attitude. And I just love that blunt. Again, it's sort of like what we were talking about a little bit with Judi Dench, but it's just like that sort of sarcastic, blunt attitude is just makes her very watchable, I think, in this film that is full of people who are kind of like deluding themselves in suburbia. Basically, she's kind of a bit of a truth teller, even though she by the end is maybe starting to stray from that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, she's really very good in sort of like just sort of like, of course, the way that she speaks. I mean, I'm reminded of that Madame Bovary scene,
Yeah,
which is
the book club
the
scene.
book club scene where
Yeah,
she's like talking about, she's like, oh, I'm Madame. Basically, the subtext of the scene is I'm Madame Bovary. But also like the text of the scene is I'm Madame Bovary, but the subtext of the scene is that, oh, I hate these women, and we'll never be friends. And so,
right.
she's good at playing both those things at the same time. Like she is giving us a heartful monologue and a heartful sort of like explanation of who she is at this point in her life, and explaining to these women and in turn the audience, like, I'm at a crossroads. All of these things are happening to me while she's talking about Madame Bovary. But at the same time, the way her eyes go from one of the other actors to the other in this movie is just shows the utter contempt she has for all of them. And so
Yeah.
this is what I like about this performance, is that there is always one more thing, more than one thing playing in her face at all times. Like even in her scenes with Patrick Wilson, she is in the scene as somebody enjoying him and enjoying being with him. But at the same time, you see, the way her eyes dart is like, I can't believe this guy is into me. And so she's always playing
Yeah.
two things at the same time. And I think that's why I like this performance and why she's excellent in it.
Yeah. It's deceptively more layered than it would look on the surface, I
Yeah.
think, which speaks for the whole film in general. Because it's like she's also a little bored and a little desperate, not to be like she's a desperate housewife, but like kind of.
She is.
Um, yeah, like that was in the air at the time.
Yeah.
But there is again that rebellious aspect to her that sort of wants to provoke the other housewives too, because she does have contempt for them, and she does seem to like this guy Brad because he seems like a normal person compared to the others. but there is just this very clear charge between them, like when she dares him to kiss her and they kiss, and it sort of startles her a little just how like kind of like turned on she was by this. I think their chemistry is kind of off the charts here. I think they're very, very sexy together.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which is
Very, very
which is
hot.
important.
I mean, Kate
Yeah.
Winslet has had a lot of sex on screen, and she's always sexy.
Yes.
And she has great
Yes.
chemistry with whoever she's fucking on screen. So it's not a surprise.
Sure. I mean, if we're gonna mention it, they do have the scene in the laundry room.
Oh my God,
Which
yes.
is quite
Dominated by Patrick Wilson's ass. Yes, I think that's what you wanted to say, right?
Yes, thank you for taking the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, but I love also like her bluntness when he asks her like if she feels bad that they're doing this mid-sex, and she's like, no, not really. I don't know exactly what she says. And he says he feels bad about it, and just like the shame of that sort of makes it hotter somehow for both of them.
Yeah.
Like they're being kind of naughty, and that kind of turns them on.
Yeah.
And she really, after that, I think kind of has more of a sexy sort of looseness to her. Like all the tension she's been carrying around has kind of like faded away.
Yeah.
And sometimes, that's what a good lay can do.
Yeah,
It's just
totally.
like,
Yeah.
just like there's a more of a sensuality there, I think, after that point. And I feel like none of that is actually like overtly commented on necessarily, but I do think she inhabits that so naturally, and there's no artifice again for me in this performance either, like I talked about with Penelope, or like an overt Oscar scene. Maybe the Madame Bovary scene is a little Oscar-y feeling, just
Yeah.
a literary aspect of it, but
Yep.
I'm just like so in it with her. And I
Yeah.
also just want to comment again, I'm kind of all over the place, but the accent work still always kind of astonishes me when she speaks in an American accent and doesn't really slip at any point for me, at least,
Yeah.
in the British.
I mean, she doesn't. She's like an accent queen. Like I think she knows. Like that's like the basic of what she does. And like I think we're in a caliber now with the actresses we're talking about this week. Like accent work is base for them, and that's like like Judi Dench doing sort of a North London accent. So does Kate Blanchett, where she's doing a very specific sort of like upper middle class North London accent. Meryl Streep, she's American, but I'm sure it's a specific Eastern Seaboard accent, if I was, which she is also an Eastern Seaboard dame, but still, like, I think with the caliber we're talking about today, like Penelope Cruz speaking Italian in many movies, like, I think that's just base for these actresses.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say one thing also, like, this, Kate Winslet in general reminded me of Patricia Neal in HUD, in that she has this sort of like earthy sexiness that sort of comes at you where you don't expect it. Like she's not the bombshell. She's more of just an ordinary woman who knows how to fuck well. And it is evident in this movie because
that's what she's doing.
Yeah, that's what she's doing. So and that's I think that's an innate thing that she has sort of like shown us in a lot of her movies, including this one.
Oh yeah, it is a very sexy confidence, that is what makes her so watchable. And it's interesting to kind of watch her sort of evolving feelings over the affair over the course of the film, and having this like huge outburst of emotion in the car as she's spying on Brad and his wife, which is kind of like hilariously over the top, her reaction, but I do enjoy it. But then she has that conversation with him at the pool, and as she's looking at him, she's like, yeah, this feels right. I don't want to give this up. And like, that's what kind of she encourages him to run away with her for a day, and also blow off his bar exam that he was going to take that night, and just is like acting fully impulsively, which is the kind of where the title Little Children really resonates, with how these like full grown adults who may think that they're being reasonable people are actually kind of acting very impulsively in their lives.
I agree with all of that. I mean, Kate Winslet just kind of knows how to like take a scene and give it so much than what's on the page, and I think she does that in every scene with this movie.
Absolutely.
There's
Yeah,
always,
that's exactly what we talked about with Eternal Sunshine too, where
yeah.
that could have been pretty flat on the page, but that is just so filled with meaning to
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always many things happening with her when she's on screen,
Mm-hmm.
besides just the dialogue or hitting the mark or whatever. There's so many other things that are happening in her face, and she has this amazing face that can show so many emotions at the same time.
Absolutely. And also, that's true in the scene where she gets a little sloppy when she's invited over to dinner with Brad and his wife. And she honestly is like barely even concealing the fact that they're having an affair. Just the looseness that Kate brings to it. It's like, you know what? I don't care. I know what I feel. And she's so consumed by Brad that she doesn't even give much thought to his wife right over there.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe over time, I don't know if this is exactly right, but just how I read it is, if people are going to judge me no matter what I do, like all these judgmental little housewives who are so scared of me because I kissed him in the park, like I'm not going to worry about pleasing them anymore. I
Yeah.
might as well just enjoy myself.
Yeah. She's
So,
known that whatever she does is going to be scrutinized anyway, so why not
yeah,
enjoy herself
why
in the
not?
meantime?
Yeah. And why not go to Brad's little football game at night and like cheer for him in the stands and act a total fool and like make out with him on the field, even though
Yeah.
like who knows like what a husband or of a wife is out there and like could very easily tell her husband about it. So it's just really fascinating how she just like kind of really gives up on caring about anything over time other than her own happiness. And it is interesting that she sort of justifies it, but also confronts him about the nature of the relationship and being like, how serious are you about this? And when he makes it clear that he's all in and that he does want to run away with her, she is like, okay, I guess we're doing this. But I do think there is a subtle way that she approaches that scene too, where it feels like she has been very hasty and impulsive. And it is going to sink in eventually that she can't realistically run away with him. And we sort of know that in the audience, even if she doesn't know that quite yet.
Yeah.
Which I just think speaks to the confidence in the writing and her performance.
Yeah. I mean, with this movie, the audience is always ahead of that character. And she's always catching up. And that's also kind of not easy to play because, she has to like play the scene, but and keep a little bit to herself because what is her name in this movie? Is it Kate?
Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah, because Sarah's deluded most of this time. She doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. She's just like the rest of us.
Yes.
Yeah, but when she goes to the park at the end to meet with Brad, ostensibly to run away with him, and then he doesn't show up because he's dumb and got distracted by these teenagers skateboarding. she panics when she ends up seeing Ronnie in the park, the convicted sex offender, who reveals that his mom died, but then she gets kind of distracted herself when Lucy, her daughter, runs off because she's brought along Lucy with her. And after she does find her, she just like breaks down in tears in the car as she's securing her in the car seat and realizing, yeah, I need to get my act together in the end and just go home and figure my shit out.
Yeah.
Right.
She's finally caught up and understood what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Because Sarah's a fantasist.
Yeah, exactly. It all comes home in the end. And there's a bit of an anticlimax that I think some people have not always loved with this film, but I think it's quite appropriate in the sort of little satirical edge that the film has. It still works for me. That's pretty much all I have on Kate, unless you have anything else.
No, just one of our best.
One of our best. Yeah. Hope she can get back with another nomination soon.
Yeah, I'm sure she will.
It's always fun to have her in the Oscar race.
Yeah, I'm sure she will.
Let's move on to our winner, Helen Mirren in The Queen. So, Helen Mirren, this was her first nomination in lead, but her third overall. To introduce Dame Helen Mirren, born in London, She acted from an early age. She was part of the National Youth Theater and already playing big roles on the stage at the Old Vic from a very early age. She was part of the Royal Shakespeare Company, so she had a lot of great bona fides even from early on. Doing a lot of stage work in the 60s and 70s. She was doing film as well, and her breakthrough there came with The Long Good Friday in 1980. She won Best Actress at Cannes a few years later for Cal. And she did lots of interesting work in films like Caligula in 2010 and The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. And in 1991, she starts playing what would be a long-running role on Prime Suspect, which won her multiple Emmys and BAFTAs through the end of its run in 2006. So keeping very busy in all these different medias. And then she nets her first Oscar nomination for The Madness of King George in 1994 in Supporting Actress. Gets another one in Supporting Actress for Gosford Park in 2001, and she also won a SAG Award for that. She is winning Emmys, like I said, another one in 1999 for Ayn Rand. So very well respected, lots of awards, and she also plays the first Queen Elizabeth I, in this two-part miniseries, Elizabeth I. Wins Emmy, Golden Globe, SAG during this exact same cycle as the Queen. So playing multiple queens within the same award cycle. Really wild how that happened. But now the Queen, she's playing Queen Elizabeth II in the 90s as she welcomes the new Labour Party Prime Minister Tony Blair, played by Michael Sheen. And pretty shortly after that, there is a tragedy of Princess Diana's death. And so Elizabeth becomes kind of unpopular with her country because she refuses to publicly acknowledge or comment on the death of Diana or make any sort of public gesture at all. And is just saying this is a private family matter and all this stuff. And a lot of this is also underlined by the strained relationship she had with Diana. And most of the film's conflict is about getting her to accept Diana's death as the national tragedy that it is, with help from Tony Blair, who rises in popularity alongside the Queen and the royal family going down in popularity. So, let's talk our winner here, Murtada. Helen Mirren, the dame herself. Thoughts on Helen and her Oscar-winning, award-sweeping performance here?
Yeah. I think what I didn't realize about this performance, because I would thought, she's playing the Queen and she managed to do a very good job out of playing the most boring woman of the most famous and most boring woman of the 20th century, both things. But also, I didn't realize the momentum, when you're talking about playing Elizabeth I in the same year and being on a long time run of Emmy-winning performances in Prime Suspect, which is a huge hit. So I think it's not just her playing Elizabeth II, it's the fact that she's Helen Mirren having this momentum that made her sort of like the winner, the anointed winner from the very beginning. So it's two things. This movie is very watchable, and I'm someone who still watches The Crown, although I haven't watched the last season yet. It's good, it's watchable, it's about figures you want to know a little more about. And Helen is very good. But I at the beginning of this I said 4 of these actresses are some of my favorite actresses of all time, and then there's Helen Mirren, who is not. But I also appreciate she is somebody who's had a long, varied career and did so many things. Helen Mirren started as, in all those Shakespeare things that you just mentioned, but also she has a time as sort of like the sex goddess of the art house in the 80s and 90s. And then suddenly she was playing the most prim, proper, boring woman of the 20th century in Queen Elizabeth. So she flipped something. Even in Prime Suspect, she was older, but also very sexy. And I think Helen Mirren was defined as sexy for a very long time. And then she played Elizabeth, who's anything but sexy. And I think that's also sort of like that turning of the turning of expectations in this part is kind of because people of her generation who probably voted for her to win this know her as this sexy person. And so then that's what do you call it? Deglamorization. What is the term that they win? Everybody
Deglam.
Deglam. Yes, so she deglammed. She deglammed and lost her sexiness. And gave a very credible performance. She is very watchable. And to have to wear those clothes and that wig and do those clip tones and still be watchable and interesting and entertaining. It's not an easy job. the easier here is that she had the blueprint, and it's easier for the audience to compare her to the blueprint, which she will always win because she's a charismatic actor. But I don't think it's also like an easy performance to pull off, and she pulls it off. And she had to look at a deer. And I guess when you look at a deer, you win Best Actress because Frances McDormand did it a few years later.
I wonder who's going to be the next Best Actress winner to do that. Maybe Amy Adams in Night Bitch.
Yeah, I'm just gonna look at some dogs.
Right.
I
Meaningful
mean,
look at a dog.
yeah.
Yeah.
I like this film. I think it's my least
Yeah.
favorite of the five, and this is my least
Yeah.
favorite performance of the five. But also, I understand why she won, and I think it's a good win. Like, this is not a bad win. Like, it's a good, worthy performance for
Yeah.
an actor who should have an Oscar, and this is her Oscar.
Yes, well said. I pretty much agree with that take as well. This is, like, of the five, the one that I respect, but don't necessarily love or want to gush over necessarily. And that is probably because of the fact that she is playing a person who is not all that fascinating to me, quite frankly. But yeah, I mean, just to speak generally, I do enjoy Helen Mirren. It is obviously hard to deny the level of just inherent craft there in her skills. I don't have a super strong connection to her either. Like, again, she is probably like the fifth of the group in my own personal estimation. She is obviously beloved, but maybe it's because I haven't seen a ton of her earlier work that I'm not always super compelled by what she brings to a role. And she does have great performances. Like, I think Gosford Park is stellar and maybe should have won for that personally, but I don't know. Sometimes there's a little bit of a distance there for me with her, and I guess that is what makes this a good role for her, and in that the distance is kind of purposeful here.
Is the point.
She's playing, she's playing a public figure who keeps things really internalized and rarely loses her cool. So that is, again, what makes her good casting, and the slight resemblance there obviously helps too. It's a very good performance. I think, right away you see why she won. The speech pattern, the sort of high pitch of it, the very dignified posture of it, the attitude in that first scene even, of where she's like talking to this painter and being like, oh, I wish I could vote. And he says that she'll have to just settle for like being the ruler of the people. And she's like, yeah, true. It's a very confident, I think, and very skillful performance. Do I feel like I get greater insight into Queen Elizabeth and who she is and was? Not as much as I would want to, but maybe that's just down to her being such a private person and very stoic, and that it's hard to read those emotions at times. But yeah, I think it's a very good performance and clearly a very well-studied performance. Like, you could tell she really looked at a lot of footage of Elizabeth to sort of evoke her. It's not the most exciting performance in this lineup, unfortunately, but it is hard to argue with the quality here,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Helen Mirren, I have to say. I think, like, I think we said it, it's good. It's not exciting. It's not even interesting because Elizabeth, I also think like Claire Foy gave the best Elizabeth interpretation. I mean, the Queen.
I agree.
And maybe Claire Foy had more to work with. Elizabeth was young and flummoxed and falling in love and lots of things. She had, I think, a lot to work with than Helen Mirren or Olivia Colman or Imelda Staunton. And the Queen, you can think of it as the pre-season of The Crown because it's the same writer and it's the same characters and everything. So this is why this movie is influential. It gave us The Crown.
Yeah, for better or for worse,
yes.
Depending on how you think of The Crown.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to mention, though, I do always enjoy in the performance whenever Princess Diana is invoked, and just how she reacts personally on her face is just always very funny, because she sort of bristles a little bit, like whenever there is mention of her in a positive way, or like, it's pointed out to her directly, like, Diana is the mother of your grandchildren, but there is this layer of ice there and just this stubbornness, that is just so cold. Like, even when she watches her on TV and she's like, she looks so bored watching this sort of in memoriam package
Yeah.
of Diana, which is very revealing, and just being like, I'm going to bed. Just like she's had enough. She can't handle this.
Yeah.
And I think there's also kind of a rudeness that I do appreciate that they show and showcase with Elizabeth, and don't just make it into like a, hagiography or what this could have been. And showing to, like, even when she's in Prince Charles' company, who is presumably still kind of having some version of grief for his ex-wife, but saying, oh, Diana loved to show affection as long as the cameras were around. These very like sharp, biting things.
Yeah.
And just like demonizing this poor woman so casually and cruelly. Like those are the moments that I do appreciate from the film, that showcase that Elizabeth was not just like this nice, placid, sort of even-keeled person, that she did have a real edge to her at times that was kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the way she walks, frankly. I think that's the most successful part of the movie for me. Is like she does walk like Elizabeth, in this sort of like, she's kind of a robot, but no, it's just slightly human, slightly robot, slightly queen. Like people will quickly say it's regal, but I would say it's only 1/3 regal, because there's an awkwardness there too. This is somebody who knows people are watching every move she makes, and so it gives her, yes, she's regal and she's been trained how to walk, but also there's a slightly robotic awkwardness to it, and I think Mirren captures that really well. So whenever she's walking, I'm like, all right, Mirren, you deserve that Oscar. That's a good walk.
Yes, walk, Helen, walk. Yes. No, that's true. That is a big part of it, I think, inhabiting it in that way. I also really just enjoy when she is kind of railing against the media for, like, as she says, sort of stirring things up. Sounds familiar. Certain politicians in our country tend to say the same thing to this day. But anyway, kind of reaffirming to Tony Blair with this real firmness, like, I know the British people, and like what we need is this period of like quiet mourning, basically. And I think sort of like what Meryl is doing, there is a definite skill there in being able to be so forceful in a way without raising her voice too much. I definitely prefer Meryl's version of that, but I think that stoicism with Elizabeth is very difficult to nail without seeming a little dull, which I think there are moments here that I do find a bit dull in the performance, but it's hard to say if that is the character or my thoughts on Helen and her performance.
Yeah, I think it's the character. It's just such a dull character.
Yeah.
Like she does, like, I don't think anybody could have done any more with this character, but yeah.
True. Yeah. Just one other thing, just to bring it back to what you were mentioning about seeing the deer when she drives out into the water and the car breaks down and sees this sort of, and it's this sort of symbolic moment that has been discussed a lot with this film.
Yeah.
Like, what does this represent? Is this like Diana that she's seeing, and it's like, this is her grief that she's processing or something? Is it like, oh, these are the old values of Britain that are being shot down? Or is it just, is she recognizing, am I seeing myself? Is it the Queen and the regality of it all and lasting as long as she has? Whatever you think of it, I think she does communicate that this is kind of the change in the Queen. Apparently she had to touch grass a bit to realize
literally
that yes, that her way of thinking was not meeting the moment, I guess. But obviously a very effective scene, just this quiet little moment of breaking down in tears and having, like, no one else is around, so she can fully have a moment to herself. So a nice moment. I also like the scene where she's out finally, acknowledging all the flowers and all the things that people have put around the castle. And
it's a walking scene.
It is walking. So Murtada's paying attention. Yes. But the way she kind of is like talking to that little girl, she thinks that she's got flowers for Diana, but instead it's for the Queen herself. And just like her kind of like, oh, just this moment of recognition, very subtle, obviously, but very effective. So it's a really lovely, respectful performance that is clearly well thought out. I just wish the character herself were a little more interesting to discuss,
Hmm.
I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I like what you mentioned about the different interpretations of the deer
Hmm.
scene, because I think
Yeah.
that's one of those scenes where it works because everybody at this end of the scene sort of have their own idea of what this was or what it was. And
Yeah.
so it's the deer becomes a symbol for whatever we want to think of Elizabeth or the movie. And that's why it works. And Helen makes it work. Like, she gets that moment. I think that's the Oscar clip. No, was that the Oscar
Oh,
clip?
yeah. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's time to get into why we think Helen Mirren was our winner this year. So, for precursors, again, what's really kind of amazing about this, or predictable based on how you want to look at it, is these five were the five going all the way through. Critics' Choice, SAG, BAFTA, it was these exact five: Penelope Cruz, Judi Dench, Helen Mirren, Meryl Streep, Kate Winslet, right down the line. Then with the Golden Globes, again, all of them were nominated, four of them in drama. Meryl, of course, won the comedy musical Golden Globe. She was the only one other than Helen Mirren who actually got to win something this year. Because, yeah, Helen Mirren won pretty much every award in sight, including all the major critics and even most of the minor critics, too, plus all the major precursors. It was signed, sealed, delivered for Helen Mirren. No one else was even coming close. So, having said that, why do we think Helen Mirren was our winner from its very stacked group of actresses we love?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just repeat myself. I think
Yeah.
in your introduction of Helen, you sort of, outlined the momentum that was going on with her career.
Mm-hmm.
With Prime Suspect, Emmys, BAFTAs, finally being in a movie that was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
It was her third nomination, so it's time. Usually, a lot of people win on their third nomination, and it was frankly making the most boring woman in the world less boring. Like Elizabeth is well known and recognizable, but nobody expected Helen Mirren to play her so well. Like, looking back now, we take it for granted, of course. People can play Elizabeth, but this was the
Yeah.
reigning monarch who is still pretty much alive and a public figure. And people at least in the UK, saw her almost every day. And so for somebody to then, come and give a screen interpretation that was actually excellent, everybody was just like, yeah, give her the Oscar, give her every other award.
Yeah. She really had been putting in so many years of great work. Again, winning all those awards, and Prime Suspect was very popular. She already had those two other nominations. She was in the club, and this was just the era of the biopic and the era of the transformation, and she checks both those boxes. This is the fifth Best Actress win since Julia Roberts this decade to be from a biopic or someone playing a real person. No one else in this category playing a real person. So it's also such a broadly appealing film, I think, and performance. Like, you look at Judi Dench in Notes on a Scandal, that's a very dark, campy sort of film that I can imagine not everyone could get on board with. Volver has maybe the non-English language bias, which will thankfully be broken next year with Marion Cotillard, but she was also her film's only nomination. Kate Winslet in Little Children, I think her time was coming and people are starting to talk about it, but it's not, for me, like the traditional kind of performance that would win in this category normally that they might be looking for. Meryl is Meryl. It was a very popular film, but I again sort of struggle to see like a mostly male Academy going for that performance because the film was sort of considered like a chick flick. Plus, you could say, is borderline lead supporting, so didn't totally dominate her film, So I think it was just an obvious choice for a wide Academy to embrace without too much resistance. Plus,
Yeah.
as mentioned, she is the only person in a Best Picture nominee. So, and I think maybe that nomination for Best Picture feels like it was kind of carried by
Her
the strength
performance,
of her
yeah.
performance. Yeah.
Because
So,
yeah, this movie, what did it get Best Director too?
yeah, it did.
Yeah,
Stephen
so
Frears.
I mean, Stephen Frears is a good director, but like this movie hasn't, there shouldn't be, and when Volver is there, like it should not be in Best Picture and Best Director,
Yeah,
and it's Helen why she is, why the movie is.
I think so too. Yeah. So again, even in this very, very incredible lineup, it just does make sense that she is naturally the person that everyone can kind of have a consensus on as like, oh yeah, incredible. So I also just wanted to mention this. I don't know if you've seen her speech recently, Helen's speech, where she talks about Queen Elizabeth, and at the end she holds up her Oscar and she says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Queen."
I did see it.
Every time I watch that, I'm like, what exactly does she mean?
It is puzzling because is the Oscar the Queen? Like, I don't understand.
Right. Yeah. Is she comparing the Oscar to the Queen? Like, is she saying the reason she won is because she played the Queen? I've never fully understood it. Is this just a dedication, I guess? I don't know. Am I overthinking it? I've always been a little confused. Just wanted to
you're overthinking it, but it is confusing.
Thank you. Okay.
Because I think the thing I like about that speech is when she tells everybody wants to get gold stars, and this is the biggest and goldest. That's like a good, everybody wants to get gold stars, which is also a nod to Barbara Covett, who had gold stars in her booklet.
Exactly. I thought the same thing. Yes.
Maybe Helen was subtly telling us Judi should have won. She's got the biggest gold star.
I bet she voted for Judi.
I don't know. They all vote for themselves.
Fair enough. They say they don't, but let's be honest. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, again, it's tough because there wasn't really a huge race, but I'm excited to see what we say in the end for who we think was the runner-up. But let's get to our Twitter questions.
All right. I'm excited. Yes, let's go.
Yes. Our friend Fritz said, it's often called one of the greatest lineups ever. Would it make your top 10 of the ones you have covered already?
Yes, yes, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. For you, you've covered them all, but I would just say in general, I think it's the best of that decade, definitely.
Easily. Yeah. I mean, like 1950 is iconic. 1962 is great. 74 is great. 95. And then this, I would say, is probably the top 5 for me. So yeah, it's incredible, top to bottom. Well, Bruno said, what a thrill to hear a discussion about this lineup. Is this probably the best lineup of the 2000s? You said yes already. Yeah, and I would go so far as to say the best of the century so far.
Yeah, I would say it's, if it's not the best of the century, it's probably second. But at this moment, I just can't picture them all. But yeah, it's probably up there.
Okay, well, Adam said, if this were the best picture lineup, how high up would it rank among the greatest of all time?
I would say pretty high up, because these 5 movies, I think we started the conversation saying they're still culturally relevant. 18 years later, is it 18? Yes. And very watchable and up there. I mean, I think I already made the case for Notes and a Scandal being a classic, but I would make a case for Volver too. If you love Pedro, I think it's top there in his top 5 films of all time. I think you can't. The Queen, God is the Crown, so that's also culturally relevant. I think but just they're all watchable. Like they're all movies that you want to watch over and over. Like they have layers, and when you watch them again, you discover more things. And of course, The Devil Wears Prada is the most successful of them all, and it's the one that's people are still talking about it to this day.
Extremely rewatchable. Yeah. Definitely would replace pretty much all the Best Picture nominees. Yeah, all due respect.
I mean, who's talking about
Queen there? So.
Yeah, Awajima or whatever,
or Babel.
Babel. Yes.
Yeah. I have a soft spot for Little Miss Sunshine, but I know that's a little divisive.
Yeah.
So, all right. Richard Thompson said, Helen Mirren's performance was seen as undeniable at the time. That view no longer holds for most. With a year as incredible as this one, it seems like no surprise. But then, why was it so undeniable back then?
I think we answered this question.
We already talked about it. Yeah. She's playing a real person. Very easy to watch. I think a lot of people thought she really nailed it, and she had the narrative momentum in her career and gave us insight into a kind of like enigmatic person. Similar question from Joey Gentili, which is much more shady, but love Helen Mirren, but what a boring performance. How does this steamroll? How? Again, talked about it. I wish she didn't steamroll, but it's easy to see why.
Also, I don't think it's boring. Like, I think Elizabeth is boring. Elizabeth II is very boring, but I don't think Helen Mirren as Elizabeth is boring. Like, she gave us, like, this would have been so boring if it was actually watching footage of Elizabeth. But Helen, she did. We talked about the walk. We
Yeah.
talked about the deer. Like she had
Hmm.
a lot of things that she gave the audience with this performance.
Yeah, I think so. She
So
did.
sorry, Joey, it's not boring. What are you talking about?
Yes, stop confusing the character for the performance. Because, sometimes the Oscars do that. They vote for the character instead of the performance, but that's another tangent. Yes, Miles McHale said, "For me, this is both Kate and Judi's best work, and one of Meryl's third act strongest nominations, and we have Penelope for a great Almodovar. Has the steamroll of Mirren aged worse because of the quality of the lineup?"
I think a lot of people say it's the worst of the five. And I do kind of agree with that, but I also just don't think it's a bad performance. So I don't think it had
Yeah,
aged badly, in
I
my
don't think so.
estimation, because she is a respected actor and with her fans, and she did do something. She was the first to give an interpretation of Queen Elizabeth, and now there's like almost every British actress has to give an interpretation of Elizabeth II, it seems.
Yeah,
So I don't think it has aged badly.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we wish it was more of a race, that there were more people winning other awards than just a steamroll, but no, I don't think it's aged poorly at all. Andy Bayless said, "Are there any roles from Helen Mirren's earlier career or since that you would nominate her for?"
I'm not as familiar with Helen Mirren's career. Like I think
Yeah.
she's really great in The Cook, the Wife, whatever that movie's called, Her Lover.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like her in
The
White
cook, the thief,
Nights.
his wife, and her mother. Her
Yeah, Her
lover.
Love. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like her in
White
White
Nights, yeah.
Nights. Yeah. But I
Sure.
don't think either of those are like nominations. I do agree with you that her best performance is probably Gosford Park. And
Yeah.
maybe she should
That's
have
what I would
won
say too.
over Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Declan Cashin said, "Not just an all timer lineup, but also arguably the one that homosexuals feel most passionate about. What other Best Actress or Supporting Actress races do you think are the most homosexually supported?" What a great question.
That is a great well, 1950, obviously, because
1950. That's the
yes,
one.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
I would say 62 because
Yep.
of just whatever happened to Baby Jane. But do people watch Long Day's Journey into Night? I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's tough. Yeah. No, not
but I
really.
mean, Katharine
Um,
Hepburn is Katharine Hepburn,
yeah.
a queer
Yeah.
icon too. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just like that movie. I don't think anybody watches. But yeah.
Well, we mentioned the one that I think a lot of homosexual support was behind, the 2018, with like Olivia Colman, Glenn Close, Lady Gaga, Melissa
Yeah.
McCarthy, Julissa Aparicio. Like there was a lot going on there for the gays, I think.
Yes, for
you know.
sure. Um, I think 2013 is also like gay friendly, like,
Mm,
Blue Jasmine, which is, I know we're not supposed to like Woody Allen anymore, but it's a good movie. And I think August
mm-hmm.
Osage County is Broadway. We have Judi Dench as Philomena or whatever that was,
Yes.
and Amy
Bring the
Adams.
real Philomena going to all the award shows. What a time.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
has
Amy Adams.
actresses.
Yep.
Yeah, like
Yeah, for sure.
the gays love Meryl, Judy, Kate, Amy Adams, and Sandra Bullock.
Yeah.
Another steamroller. I think Kate broke the number of awards. Helen Mirren
Yeah.
held the record for how many awards she won until Kate won more for Blue Jasmine. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, both Zoe G and Maddie Lucas, the last guest we just had on for 2005, they both want to know who is the best Queen Elizabeth II: Helen Mirren, Claire Foy, Olivia Colman, or Imelda Staunton.
I think it's Claire Foy. I mean, I would say
I
Claire
think
Foy,
it's Claire
right?
Foy too.
It's
Yep.
Claire Foy.
I
Um,
would say Helen Mirren is second.
hmm. Yeah, I'm not a fan of. I love Olivia Colman, but I'm not a fan of her Queen Elizabeth. So I probably agree with
Yeah.
you. And I haven't seen
Yeah.
enough of Imelda Staunton because I haven't seen the last season.
I would put her third and then Olivia Colman last.
Yeah.
Still good, but yeah, not for me quite as effective. Also from Maddie, if Staunton played Queen Elizabeth in The Queen, does she still sweep like this? So if this is
I'm,
Imelda Staunton instead of Helen Mirren.
I mean, she won't have the career momentum that Helen had.
Yeah. Well, she
Um,
just had Vera Drake, but Yeah, not as
But
much
Helen
momentum.
was, yeah, Helen had a lot more going for her. But I think that there's sometimes, like you said, they were in, biopic mode, and sometimes the role is. I just don't think Emile Stanton would have been cast.
Probably not. Not at that time,
Yeah.
certainly. Yeah. Hi Girls, Hi Louise said, in a world where the crown existed before the queen, would Mirren still win here, or would we have simply had too many queens stand before us? Interesting point, but I don't know. It definitely felt more fresh than it does now, where we have these three other actresses who have played her since, and maybe
Hmm.
that's part of why there's a little bit of like not so much passion anymore about Helen Mirren and the Queen, is that we have the crown now, we have all this
Yeah.
different,
Yeah, but at the time, I think people knew Elizabeth, and she was the first person to like, oh, I'm gonna play this person you all think you know so well. And
right.
that freshness probably is one of the factors why she won. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just gonna do this one quickly because it could take a while, but Kevin McQueen said Helen Mirren was the seventh actress to win aged 60 plus at the time of her win. Rank these 7 performances that are also over 60 leading up to this. Marie Dressler, Katharine Hepburn in 1967, Katharine Hepburn in 1968, Katharine Hepburn in 1981, Geraldine Page, Jessica Tandy, Helen Mirren. Okay, like I said, I'll do this really quick. Number 1 with a bullet is Katharine Hepburn in The Lion in Winter. No question. And then I would do Marie Dressler in Min and Bill. I have a soft spot for that performance. Then Geraldine Page in The Trip to Bountiful. And then right in the middle would be Helen Mirren in The Queen. And then Katharine Hepburn in On Golden Pond. And then Katharine Hepburn in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And dead last, Jessica Tandy in Driving Miss Daisy.
I don't think I can do better. I'll just, sign off on everything you said.
Thanks. Okay, good. Um, Fritz said the nominees are, this is a hypothetical.
How many questions does Fritz get?
He gets like 10 per episode. He has so many good, insightful questions. So
I love it.
like
I
to read
love
them.
it. I love it.
He says the nominees are Julia Roberts, Aaron Brockovich, Halle Berry, Monsters Ball, Nicole Kidman, The Hours, Charlize Theron, Monster, and Helen Mirren in The Queen. Who wins? So it's like an all-stars of who wins Best Actress of the Best Actress winners of the decade so far.
I mean, Julia wins for me.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is asking for us who wins or like generally who wins.
Oh, for me,
But
Julia wins, but also Julia wins
yeah,
because she's the biggest star of these people, and she's
true.
yeah.
Yeah. I think Charlize Theron would be the closest competition just because that's such a transformation. But yeah, I kind of agree that Julia would even win over that group. Even for as much as Helen Mirren swept, there was no denying Julia.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Another quick one I'm going to do, which is a ranking. Maddie Lucas, rank the Stephen Frears Best Actress nominees. Glenn Close, Judi Dench, Helen Mirren, Judi Dench again, and Meryl Streep. Okay. So, well, first of all, I'm just going to say I'm not going to do Judi Dench and Philomena or Meryl Streep and Florence Foster Jenkins because I need to rewatch both of them for this show and I haven't talked about them yet. So, of the other 4, number 1 is Glenn Close in Dangerous Liaisons. Please. Angelica Houston in The Grifters, second. And then Helen Mirren in The Queen. And then Judi Dench in Mrs. Henderson Presents. Yes.
I mean, I agree Glenn Close would be, top there. I don't know if I'm coming back to the Philomena episode or not, but I would put Judi as Philomena second to Glenn Close. I do love
it's really good.
Judi and Philomena.
Yeah. All right. Christoph said, I loved Penelope Cruz's nomination back in the day, but I was certain she would be a one and done nominee. 3 nominations and 1 win later, I still marvel at her Oscar journey. Should she teach a masterclass to non-English speaking actresses how to win the Academy's favor?
I mean, okay, maybe. Well, there's Sophia Loren, there's Marion Cotillard. There are multiple nominees too.
But she has 4. So, it's pretty good for Penelope. It is pretty impressive that she has pulled this off when, like I said, so many of those haven't gotten past 2. Like Liv Ullmann hasn't gotten past 2. You know, I just think Penelope is a very popular person and very well respected. And like I said, she could have come close to a 5th nomination this past year for Ferrari. You know, I'm
Yeah.
sure she was in the top 10 for that. So
Yeah. She also works a lot.
she does. She does work a lot. That helps. Well, 4 different people asked the same question, so I'm just going to go ahead and combine it. Owen Daly, Joey Gentili, Josh, and Bori Moves. They all want to know what other leading ladies from Pedro Almodovar movies should have gotten Best Actress nominations.
Well, definitely Cecilia Roth in All About My
Yes,
Mother.
that's the big one for me. Yeah. And there was plenty of room in 1999 to put her in there.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, Carmen Moro for Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. That was pretty iconic performance.
Those
and
would be the big ones.
And Victoria Abril for Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, which is a movie I love.
Yes, okay. Levi said Penelope wouldn't be nominated for Best Actress again until 2021. Cast those actresses in this lineup.
All right. Well, Olivia Colman's there, right? So she could play the Queen. She already played her.
Very easy. Yep.
Yeah. Who would play Miranda Priestley from 2021? So, can you tell us who the 2021 nominees are?
Yes. Okay. Jessica Chastain, of course, the winner. Olivia Colman, Penelope Cruz, Nicole Kidman, and Kristen Stewart. Where would I slot in Kristen Stewart? That's tough.
I know. That is tough in this lineup. Jessica Chastain can do the Kate Winslet role, I think.
Yeah.
Olivia the Queen, Penelope's Penelope. Yep. And so Kristen is either Miranda Priestley or Barbara Covett.
I would love an old, aging lesbian Kristen Stewart playing Barbara Covett.
Yeah, totally. But maybe Olivia should play Barbara Covett and then Kristen Stewart can play the Queen. She did play Diana.
She already played Diana, so why not take it one step further? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Nicole Kidman as Miranda Priestley.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I like that. Well, moving on. Christoph said, is this Judi Dench's best nomination? Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Her best performance and best nomination.
Yes. See previous comments. Greg Cremeen said, if Judi hadn't won already for supporting, could she have won this year?
No. This was between Meryl and Helen. And I don't think any of the others had a chance. Also, their movies were kind of smaller. They all came later in the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a thought that part of me wonders if she didn't win for Shakespeare in Love, could she have just won for like Chocolat in that very chaotic year?
She could have probably, I mean, yeah, if she hadn't won for Shakespeare in Love, she would have not got to 2006 without a win. Like, she'd have won somewhere before, for sure.
She could have had a narrative for Iris, for all we know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, she would have definitely won before.
Yeah. Celluloid Siren said, is Judi Dench's performance here the most delicious and best villainous turn in this category since Glenn Close in Dangerous Liaisons? Or is there another malicious performance that holds that honor? A question after my own heart. Again, I think Angelica Houston in The Grifters is a slightly in that vein, but not quite as like Machiavellian feeling. Sort of like a Helena Bonham Carter in The Wings of the Dove, but that's kind of different too. So I would say Judi feels like the right sort of successor to Glenn. In this case.
I do agree with you, but I think Judi has competition in this year from Meryl as Miranda Priestley.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And it's how delightful it is that those two performances got nominated in the same year.
Yeah, definitely. Gabriel said, Judi Dench is the correct dame that should have won. Is this her first great nomination?
Okay, I don't like shade in questions about Judi Dench. I'm sorry, but Judi Dench is an amazing actress. And yes, I know people don't like Mrs. Henderson Presents, which I haven't seen. I don't think, have I ever seen that? I think I've seen it, but I remember nothing about it. But no, it's not her first. She was wonderful in Shakespeare in Love. She was wonderful in Mrs. Brown. Like
Mrs. Brown. Yeah. I think Mrs. Brown is great. She started off great. So there you go. And I think she's really, really good in Iris.
Totally. That. Yeah.
So James said, are Judi Dench's 2 consecutive nominations the most different in terms of range and quality in the history of this category? More Mrs. Henderson Presents shade.
I
Um,
really don't like that movie. I mean, these absolute questions. I don't know in the history of this category. Like, I don't know. I don't have the
yeah,
history of this category readily.
even I, even I can't answer that properly.
Yeah.
But it is quite a turnaround, I will say, from being someone who's like, yeah, this is kind of a filler nomination for Mrs. Anderson Presents to then this just incredible grand dame performance in Notes on a Scandal.
Yeah. But the unfortunate thing is that probably she was on such a relationship with the Academy members at the time that they probably think of those two performances as of equal quality. Like it's just Judi Dench is in a movie this year. Ooh, I'm gonna vote for her. Unfortunately, that
Click.
happens a
Yep.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though, yes,
totally.
one is so much better than the other.
Yeah. Greg Cramian said, which of the following Oscar nominated villains would be the best partner, romantic or friend, to Barbara Covett? Mildred from Of Human Bondage, Ellen from Leave Her to Heaven, Phyllis from Double Indemnity, Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Diana from Network, Alex Forrest from Fatal Attraction, Lily Dillon in The Grifters. Wow.
What was the one before Network?
Nurse Ratched.
Yes, I think Nurse Ratched should be her romantic partner.
I'm sure they would get along.
She loves blondes.
Yes. Well, that's true. Look, I think let's put her with Alex Forrest for Fatal Attraction.
Another
Alex
blonde.
deserves someone who can shower her with attention, and she won't be ignored.
Oh, she will definitely not ignore her. She will stalk her to death and take her hair and do everything. Yeah, they belong together. I like your answer.
I think so. There we go. Yes. Yeah. Well, both Humphrey Fogart and Shane Nomura said if Meryl had gone supporting, would she have won?
I refuse the Meryl goes. She's Meryl Streep. Why would she ever go supporting? I mean, I just refuse to come.
That, but yes,
but not in a movie where her character dominates the film.
Looms this large. Yeah, no, I agree. But that would have been quite a race with her and Jennifer Hudson if that was the case. I mean, I think the discovery factor with Jennifer Hudson probably would have still made her win. I don't know if that's controversial, but
it's not. I think Jennifer Hudson would have won. Like that's
I think so.
Jennifer Hudson would have definitely won supporting for sure over Meryl.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, Richard Thompson said, well, you're gonna hate this line of questions then. The lead of The Devil Wears Prada is Anne Hathaway. Meryl, despite being the titular devil, is distinctly supporting, so why go lead? Would she have had a better shot at supporting? Yeah, we already answered that part. She's first billed, she's Meryl, she looms large. I get it. I get why people feel this way, but I think it's fine. There are much worse examples of someone being,
Also, she's like a movie star, and it's a movie star role. Like Meryl, when she goes supporting for something like an ensemble in, Into the Woods.
Into the Woods, right?
Yeah, that's an ensemble movie, but Devil Wears Prada is not an ensemble movie, so there's no reason for her to go supporting. But that's not the question, right? Where is it the question? Anyway, she wouldn't have won.
All right, Joey Gentili said Jane Fonda, Sigourney Weaver, and Isabelle Adjani were rumored for Miranda at one point. Out of those three, which one do you want in the alternate universe?
Isabelle Adjani. I kind of like that. That would have been crazy.
Yeah, I know. I think all of them would have been great. I feel like we've sort of seen versions of like Sigourney Weaver and has already kind of done something like that in Working Girl. Jane Fonda has kind of did that in The Newsroom in a way.
Or in the movie with Jennifer Lopez, where she was kind of Barbara Walter.
Monster-in-Law.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I'll say Isabelle Adjani, who I think could be kind of terrifying. So I'd have loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
Jamie said Judy's Barbara and Meryl's Miranda are pitted head to head in combat, both verbal and physical. Who wins?
Well, verbally, Barbara Covett will win because, she's sharp-tongued. But I think maybe physically Miranda would win. She probably goes to the gym and Barbara's just old and haggard.
I mean, true. You didn't have to say it, but true. I think at the end, though, I think Barbara, there's a little bit of an insecurity there that I think Miranda could maybe tap into that and be like really kind of exploiting and like really like dragging all her fashion sense.
Yeah.
And just totally tear her apart. So maybe it would be equally matched in that respect. That's tough. Jeffrey Kerr, if The Devil Wears Prada were to compete at the Oscars today, would Meryl Streep be campaign and supporting instead of lead? Maybe more likely to be in supporting today, because that seems to be more acceptable these days.
I'll give you the help. Like, I think of Anne Hathaway in The Devil Wears Prada like Emma Stone in The Help. She's the lead, but the movie's kind of not about her. And like,
right.
And so I think Meryl will be Meryl and be nominated in lead. And, why would anybody run a campaign for Anne Hathaway in The Devil Wears Prada? Like, it's a fine performance. Like, she anchors the film. Like, it's not a bad performance. But there is nothing there that would make award bodies want to nominate her. Especially when you have an actual fantastic supporting performance right there in Emily Blunt's. So,
yeah. No, it's true.
I think they would run them both in lead and only Meryl will be supported, just like it happened that year.
And yeah, totally. Yeah. Adam said, with the recently announced sequel, do you think Miranda Priestley can be an Elizabeth/Rocky/Michael Corleone type character that brings Meryl back to the Oscar race for returning to a role?
What do you think, Kevin?
Not to be pessimistic, but I don't think so. I think the fun of this performance was the novelty of it, and unless she does have an opportunity to really build on it and show new layers, for some reason I can't really picture it being another nomination. I would love to be wrong about that, but I'm a little bit pessimistic about this sequel to begin with.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we'll see. I mean, will it even happen? Who knows?
We'll see. Right. Yeah. Still a mystery. Both Owen Daly and Alicio want to know, they have the exact same question, that The Devil Wears Prada is being rumored to have a sequel in development. Which of the other 4 nominated films here would you be interested in seeing a sequel of?
I think my answer.
The Crown. I've seen The Crown, so I don't need a Queen sequel. Just throwing that out there.
But my answer, of course. It's
Notes on a Scandal.
Notes on a Scandal. The Further Adventures of Barbara Cobbett. What is Sheba up to?
Yeah, I'm sure she's still terrorizing people. So, yeah, what happened to the woman at the end of Notes on a Scandal? Let's see what she did there.
Yeah. Somebody make that right now. Like, make it before Judi Dench is too old to work. Just make it.
Yeah. Maybe you should.
Yes. I'll start writing
script.
Write that script immediately.
Yes. I wouldn't mind checking in with the ladies of Volver if Pedro wanted to. He could do something interesting with that, but otherwise I don't need a sequel to Little Children. I don't need a sequel to The Queen. So
yes.
Definitely notes. Both Mark Lamb and Miles McHale kind of had the similar question, so I'm just going to combine them, which is that, was Little Children's subject matter too distasteful or dark for Oscar voters, and did that hurt Kate's chances of winning?
I don't know. I think Kate didn't win because of the competition, not because of her film subject matter.
Yeah. Maybe it was disturbing for some voters, but... yeah, like I said earlier, I can't picture this as a winning type of role. Like, it doesn't have that classic Oscar bait feeling to me, which is a compliment, to be clear.
Yeah. And if she she did get nominated. So disturbing movies sometimes don't get a nomination. Like, actors in David Lynch movies haven't gotten nominated, for example. Like Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet, that should have been a nomination, but didn't happen.
Naomi Watts, Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
And this very year with Laura Dern in Inland Empire.
Totally.
Yeah. Jamie said Kate set the record for youngest actress to get 5 nominations with this performance. Can you rank her first 5 nominations, and how many, if any, would you give the win? Okay, I would do Eternal Sunshine first. I always have loved that performance. And then I would do Little Children. I think this little pocket of time was the peak for me in terms of her nominations. And then Sense and Sensibility, and then Titanic, and then Iris last.
Yeah.
I think I would maybe give her the win even for Sense and Sensibility. That's,
instead of Mira Sorvino. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you?
I love Sense and Sensibility. I think I would put Titanic first, just because it's a movie, it's a phenomenon, and I will give her the win for that, because imagine Kate Winslet winning for Titanic. That would have been fantastic. Even though I
Yeah.
agree, like this is more for the movie than the performance, because I agree, like
Yeah.
but it is a movie that we still watch and obviously
Certainly.
relevant. And I would put Sense and Sensibility second,
Hmm.
then Little Children, then Eternal Sunshine, then Iris. I'm not a
Wow.
huge fan of Eternal Sunshine as most people are, um, but I think she's pretty marvelous in it too. Like these are all fantastic
Yeah.
performances.
Yeah. Matt Stillman said, "Did Judi and Kate win their Oscars for roles that weren't as great as these?"
Well, Judi won in supporting for like
Yeah, for
yeah,
8 minutes of.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I guess just by that fact, it is not as great as Barbara Covett.
sure.
I think the Kate's performance in The Reader is maybe a little bit, people don't like that movie, but I think it's more multi-layered than it gets credit for. And I think she does more in it as an actress, from accent work to aging to lots of physical performances than she does actually in Little Children. So I would
Hmm.
say maybe Kate Winslet won for the wrong role but not for Little Children. Like I said, she could have
Gotcha.
won for Sense and Sensibility or Titanic over The Reader, but I think The Reader is a better performance than Little Children.
Yeah. I haven't seen The Reader in quite some time. I will be watching that in a few weeks, so I can't really say about that right now. But for me, Judi, yes, certainly better in Notes on a Scandal, just because she has more to do and she is iconic. So, but Shakespeare in Love is, I think that's still a great supporting win, even for as little she's in that movie. Jeremy Kaplan said all five of these nominees won Oscars at some point in their careers. For each of the actresses except Helen Mirren, do you prefer the performance here or the performances she actually won for? So we already talked about those two, but Penelope Cruz, do we prefer Volver to Vicky Cristina?
Mm. I prefer Penelope and Vicky Cristina. I think she won for the right role at the right
Hmm.
time in her career. For like you said, you talked earlier about the surprise element with Helen Mirren and with Meryl Streep. I think there was a surprise element with Penelope and Vicky Cristina too, in that
Yeah,
she could do all this and in English. Although it was
sure.
half in English, not totally in English. But I think the ding on her as a performer has always been that she's not as good in English, but then she did manage to be as good in a Spanglish kind of role
Right.
and be
Yeah.
memorable and amazing and all of that. So I think she won for the right role at the right time in her career.
Yeah. I really like both the performances. I mean, just because Volver gives her more to do, that makes it easier to say she is better in Volver. But yeah, it's a really, really great performance. And I'm glad that Kate Winslet got out of the way in supporting for the reader so to make room for Penelope to win that year. But more on that in a few weeks. But for Meryl, I would prefer her and Sophie's Choice and Kramer versus Kramer to Devil Wears Prada, but it's certainly above the Iron Lady. This would have been a much preferred third win.
Yeah, I would say I would love Meryl to have won for Julie and Julia because she's so good
Yeah.
in that movie. And it's kind of what the Academy likes,
Yep.
which is a real person. And she made a funny real person, a delightful real person, and a very watchable film.
Yeah. Andrew Carden said, "What would have been the consequences of Blanchett, Breslin, and Hudson going lead? Do any or all of them make the cut, and could Hudson have put up a fight with Mirren for the win?"
Hmm. I think Hudson makes it for
Yeah,
sure at the
I
expense of probably Kate Winslet.
I think so too. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't think Breslin gets in lead.
No.
I don't think Blanchett, but she, you know, could have competed a little stronger. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
I
think just Jennifer Hudson.
but Helen Mirren still wins, right?
Helen Mirren still wins. Yes,
Yeah. Who would have won supporting though? Who was in there? Maybe Adriana Barraza then wins supporting.
maybe that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Juan Carlos Ojano wants to know who was sixth, and Patrick Rivers also asked who was sixth and seventh. So we could talk about snubs, quote unquote,
Uh,
which is really hard to say because it was always these five.
but yeah, I guess Tony Collette is one, right? Tony Collette was lead in Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, Yeah, that's a ensemble film, but she was campaign lead.
Yeah. That's the only one I remember. Who else was there that year?
Yeah, I had to really research this to figure this out. I mean, Maggie Smith for Sherry Baby was a Golden Globe nominee in drama alongside the other four. So maybe had some little critic support there too. Maybe Annette Bening for Running with Scissors, but it's hard to say because I don't know. I mean, based on how they responded to Dreamgirls, I don't really think it was Beyonce. So
But I would think
I
Beyonce probably had more of a chance than Annette Bening because Running with Scissors was just a flop everywhere. Critics,
Yeah.
box office,
She got the
everything, right?
Golden Globe nomination, but yeah, that was it. That was the end of the road. I think Naomi Watts in The Painted Veil was also in contention from what I could remember and see. I'm just going to say Maggie Gyllenhaal was sixth, just based on the Critics' Choice, or not Critics' Choice, Golden Globe nomination for drama.
Did the Critics' Choice not have 6 nominees that year?
No, not they didn't have that yet. They weren't trying to include everyone in the club just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very hard when it's the same five everywhere. And like even the critics just all went for Helen Mirren, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
right.
very hard
So
to see who else was
impossible
there.
to say.
Yeah.
Would have loved a true dark horse like Kirsten Dunst in Marie Antoinette to be in contention, but I don't think that really happened for whatever reason.
I mean, that movie was rediscovered a decade later or whatever. And the
I
year
know.
it came out,
I know.
nobody liked it.
Did win a costume design award, but yes, I take your point. Darian Desert Eagle Dominique Dion said if Meryl went supporting, who would be her replacement and who would she replace? Again, I guess I'll just say Maggie Gyllenhaal, although I have no idea. And then probably Abigail Breslin she replaces in supporting.
Yeah, I'll just say yes. Well, maybe Kate goes lead and then the two Kates are in lead.
Sure.
And Meryl is in
That would
supporting,
be
which doesn't
incredible.
make any sense. Is that okay?
Yeah. Why not? Christopher Perkins, Dreamgirls led the nominations in 8 categories. How close do we think Beyonce was to getting in?
Well, you kind of answered that by saying you think it was Sherry Baby and Maggie Gyllenhaal, right?
Sort of. It's just I don't know how much respect there was for Beyonce for that performance.
Not much. Yeah.
Probably not, but top 10 at least, I imagine, so just not maybe 6th for me. Miles McHale said, if we're going by Tony rules, Effie White is a leading lady. Who would J Hud kick out if she made it here? And would she have been able to crack this lineup, especially with Dreamgirls being a hit and coming away with 8 nominations overall? We kind of touched on this a little bit. I think she kicks out Kate Winslet. I think the top 3 were probably Helen and Meryl and Judi. And I think Penelope was a little bit on the outside of that, but probably a solid 4th. And then Kate was kind of like,
Yep.
Bringing up the rear.
And there it is, the runner-up.
Maybe. Get to it very soon. Chels, our friend Chels, has obligatory Survivor questions. I don't remember if you're a Survivor person. I don't think you are.
No. So hi, Chels,
okay.
but I'll let Kevin answer this.
Thank you. Who wins? Who dominates challenges? Best social game? Best strategy? Who would you want on your tribe or to take on reward wins? Who goes on to appear on every other reality franchise? So this is where we answer about these characters competing on a season of Survivor. What do we think would happen? Lots of tough people in this group, which makes it fun. I think Sarah is a little too impulsive to win. I don't think she could make it all the way through. Miranda, there's certainly a coldness there that I think might make it a little tough to actually win over a jury at the end. Barbara, even more so. I imagine she barely gets any votes to win. Queen Elizabeth would not be cast on Survivor, but if she were, she's lasted a long time, or she lasted a long time on that throne. Not that I think the physicality of Survivor would be her strong suit. So I will just say Raymunda. I think, she is a survivor. She can adapt very well, which I think is what you need in the game. Always making moves, very shark-like, So, I think I'm going with Raymunda as the winner from this group. And then for who is appearing on other reality shows after this, I mean, Barbara Covett is like just like confessional queen, I imagine.
Oh,
Miranda too.
yeah. Oh my God. I would love to see Barbara Covett in Confessional. She would be so amazing. It's just like, also Barbara Covett, like in Survivor, like she would be great in that she would just pit everyone against each other. Like,
She would. She would. I just feel like by the end, people would be like, we despise you,
oh
and we're
yeah.
not going to vote for you to win.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, last question from Joey Gentili. Recast these 2000 Oscar talents and Karen Black in these roles. So we got Karen Black, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Marion Cotillard, Rinko Kikuchi, and Natalie Portman. This is very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I don't know who among that group could play Queen Elizabeth.
I mean, I'd like Rinko Kikuchi to try.
Sure. I'd like to see an interpretation of that.
Yeah.
I thought of her for like a Volver type of role.
Oh yeah, sure. Fun. Yep.
Yeah. Karen Black in Notes on a Scandal.
Who else is there?
Maggie Gyllenhaal, Marion Cotillard, and Natalie Portman.
I mean, Maggie Gyllenhaal can be a good Queen Elizabeth, I feel.
Sure. I could also see her doing Little Children very easily.
Yeah.
So she could do a lot of these. Marion Cotillard, though, is interesting.
Well, Miranda Priestley, yeah.
An older, like when she gets older, little Devil Wears Prada, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I mean, she's
Natalie
like
Portman.
In her late 40s. She can play it right now. It's fine.
Okay. That's true. I always forget how old she is. Yeah. And Natalie Portman, I'm putting in the Queen. Look, she played Jackie Kennedy.
She could play the
Queen. Put on an accent.
Yeah, she could do it. She probably can do the wigs too. Yeah.
Yes. All right. We're here at our final segment here where we will reveal who we think was the runner-up of this Best Actress race. Murtada, who do you think it was?
Well, I wish it was Judi.
Sure.
But I think it was Meryl. Being she won a Golden Globe, but also is because it's Meryl, and there was legitimate talk. Like this is a year we lived through. Like there was legitimate talk of like, is this Meryl's third? Because everybody just assumes she's going to win a third, which she eventually does. And that's where the talk started about Meryl needs a third Oscar, and is it this year or not? And that is a narrative she carried for a few years after this. Yeah. But this was the first time it was mentioned. And so that's why I think she was the runner-up.
And I absolutely agree with you. I think Meryl was very easily the runner-up here. I think it was this was another very broadly appealing performance that is very easy to see, the acting, but not in a negative way. Like it's just very apparent that she is making clear choices and creating this instantly iconic character. So yeah, I think this was definitely the beginning of the let's get Meryl a third narrative that would culminate in the worst of those films, unfortunately. But, that's the Oscars for you. What can I say? So, yeah, my other question for you, I'm pretty sure I already know the answer, but who would you have voted for from this lineup? Yeah,
I mean, I would vote for Judi Dench from this lineup. Although I think all of them, including Helen Mirren, would have been amazing worthy winners and better than a lot of winners we got around them in those years.
I know. I wish you could spread them out over like all these years.
Yeah, and so it's a pity that the timing works like this. That sometimes you get just such an amazing year like this, and this was a really amazing year. But yes, I would vote. Like if I were to rank them, I would rank Judi Dench first, then Penelope Cruz second, then Meryl, then Kate, then Helen.
Well, this is gonna make it sound like I'm copying you, but I literally all the way through have the exact same ranking.
That's why we're here talking to each other about this year. Yay, I love that.
We are so in sync on this year. I absolutely 1000% would have voted for Judi Dench here. I would so love for this to have been her Oscar, even though I respect that Shakespeare in Love win. This is just such an incredible culmination of everything she does best in a delicious, delicious role. So yeah, she easily gets my vote. But Penelope Cruz is really, really incredible. If people haven't seen Volver, like it really is, she's right up there for me. And Meryl is obviously like, these are three of the best for me of the entire decade. And, you know, Kate Winslet and Helen Mirren maybe slightly below that for me, but are still pulling in some of their best performances. So
Yeah.
Such fun talking with you about this,
Yeah.
Murtada. This flew right by, just like Judi Dench said. It'll fly by.
It did
and
fly
it really
by.
Did.
I think we've been talking for 3 hours. Oh my God.
We sure have.
It
and
did
that is
fly
what
by.
This year deserves.
Yes. I also just one last thought that I want to say. I was like, we
Sure.
did rank Helen and Kate like fourth and fifth, but it's not. I think it's maybe the films, like, you know, Little
Yeah.
Children is a great film, but it's also just not a film that you fall in love with just because it makes you, it's so disquieting and it's disturbing. And so
don't want to rewatch it as much.
You don't want to rewatch it as much when the other three movies are just so fucking rewatchable the whole time. Notes on a Scandal, Volver, and The Devil Wears Prada. But this is a fantastic year. Thank you so much, Kevin. I feel so honored that you had me again and you had me to talk about this year, which just contains all my favorite actresses, and Helen Mirren. And you know, Notes in a Scandal, a masterpiece. I already made the case for what a masterpiece it is, and I'm so happy to talk about it all the time. So thank you so much. I always have such fun with you. This was really great.
Yes, always a blast to talk to you about actresses. It's really, really fun. So I'm glad that you lived up to the promise of what I was expecting from this episode. So thank you for bringing it. Where can people find more of your work if they want to follow you?
Yes. Follow me on Twitter at ME_says, on Instagram at Murtada_E, and you can read my criticism at Variety and the AV Club.
Very good. And thank you all so much for listening. You can find me on all platforms at Kevin_Jacobson. Shows at Oscar Runner Up on Twitter, Instagram at And the Runner Up Is. Rate, review, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you liked what you heard, go to patreon.com/andtherunnerup is, where you can hear a whole lot more. So in 2 weeks, we will be breaking down the Best Actress lineup of 2007, where the nominees were Cate Blanchett in Elizabeth the Golden Age, Julie Christie in Away From Her, Marion Cotillard in La Vie en Rose, Laura Linney in The Savages, and Elliot Page in Juno, with the winner being Marion Cotillard. So with that, thanks again, Murtada.
Thank you.
And I will bid you all adieu.